can say anything you want, Jane, about any subject matter that relates to this.
Just want to try that one.
Could be, doesn't have
Good
to be
evening.
exclusive to Rogers. You are the student representative.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the school committee meeting for December 12th. Tonight is an organizational meeting. So by policy, as the clerk, I'll open the meeting. Ms. Nash, may we have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Present.
Okay. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'd ask everyone for a moment of silence for the following people. James Pont, brother of Beth Dias, one of our Rogers High School paraeducators. Lori Trail, sister of Susan Potter, one of our pre-K paraeducators. Lynn Holland, grandmother of Caitlin Quirk, special educator at Pell. And Barry Crowley, uncle of Jamie Crowley, Rogers High School assistant principal. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for any nominations for the election of chairperson. May I have any nominations?
Madam Clerk, I nominate David Haynes to serve as chair for the next year.
Second.
Okay, first and second, Mrs. Boland. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. At this point in time, I'd ask for a vote. We have a nomination for David Haynos as chair of the Newport School Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Haynos. You're now the chair again.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Superintendent Germain, and thank you to my colleagues for your support and trust in me to be the chair of the school committee for the upcoming season. The next order of business tonight will be to accept nominations for vice chair. Do I have any nominations out there for vice chair? Mrs. Gaines.
I nominate Ray Gomes.
Second.
Vice chair.
Second.
Motion's been made, nomination's been made by Mrs. Gaines, seconded by Mrs. Sylvia. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, I will have a show of hands. All those in favor of electing Mr. Gomes as the vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. Mr. Gomes, you are vice chair for the upcoming year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda would be a brief look at the new year ahead of us. We have a lot going on in this upcoming year, I believe. We have a lot of committees that are upcoming and going. It's exciting. We have a lot of changes coming to the district. We had a lot of changes within the district last year, and we've got some growing pains from all those changes. So with the upcoming season, we are going to be looking into the potential of replacement or relocation and or both of the such for Rogers High School. We are going to be looking for expansion on this particular campus, whether it be here or whether it be on another site for pre-K and just the number of children that we have within this building here. So that has to be dealt with. We have school time changes that we dealt with a couple of years ago at Rogers High School that may or may not be working. We're going to need to look into that. Changes in time at this particular campus right here, Pell School. We know we have a lease good for the next couple of years at John F. Kennedy for our pre-K students. So that's not as emerging of an issue, but it is definitely an issue. And that along with just the other day-to-day things as far as curriculum, we have a scheduling grant that we just received, and we're going to be receiving some help looking at the scheduling at Thompson Middle School and Rogers High School, which is exciting, and we're going to be looking for a lot of input on that. There's going to be focus groups on that, all of which we'll be soliciting the input from not just my colleagues and the staff and the administration of the school department, but you, the parents, and also the taxpayers as well when it comes to decisions on building schools and placing them and things of that nature. So hopefully we'll have as much input as we have in the past. A lot of the committees we've had in the past, strategic planning, seemed to be very successful. There was a lot of help that was out there involved in that, and our hats off to all of the individuals who donated their time to become part of that. So it's an exciting year. I'm certainly humbled and proud to represent the school department right now, the school committee, as their chair with Raymond Gomes and the rest of my colleagues up here. Thank you very much. I look forward to another busy year. Thank you, Superintendent Germain.
You're welcome.
All right, we have Ms. Nash. Do we have anybody signed up this evening for public comment?
Yes, we do. We have two individuals signed up for public comment versus Jennifer Jackson.
And just again, Jennifer Jackson, if there's something on the agenda that we're going to be discussing, you'll have the opportunity to talk on that. Other than that, if you just state your name and you know the rules.
I know the rules.
All right,
Been
you got it,
here a
Jennifer.
lot. Know the rules. Know the regulations here. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Jackson. I reside at 38 Dudley Ave in Newport. I am a parent of a Pell and Thompson student. I'm also the Thompson PTO president. I have been asked to read this letter for 17 parents that came together to discuss their concerns. And unfortunately, they don't feel comfortable enough to speak on this and are scared that there may be consequences to their children or themselves for speaking, but they feel as though their voices need to be heard, and I don't mind talking for them. So this is what they wrote. And just so you know, these are various backgrounds of parents from all of our schools and different backgrounds. To our teachers, school administration, and political constituents, please hear us out. How dare you disrupt our lives with no concerns for our schedule or our need to desperately find daycare and care in general for our children. Please listen carefully. Without our children, school staff wouldn't have jobs. Without our children, the school committee wouldn't have their political seats. And without children, bus companies, food companies, crossing guards, and everyone else that works for our school system, they too wouldn't have their jobs. We are done. One side threatens the other with walking out. The other side threatens to lock doors to prevent coming in. And the other side decides to disrupt their differences in public like children. As professionals, what kind of example do you give us or the children? What will happen if we decide to act like you? You hold your positions, whether it's paid or political, not by accident, but to serve our children, our grandchildren, our foster children, all children. Now the cards are on the table. We can also send you all a message, fix this, fix it now, because without us, you wouldn't have your jobs and political careers. We don't mind disrupting our lives and your jobs to get our point across too. You were voted on or hired to do your job. Sorry, it's my first time reading this. If you don't fix this now, we too can act like you. We can strike, walk out, and lock our doors until you get that we are whom you are here to serve, and you cannot continue to use for your benefit. Please stop disrupting our households and schedules. Talk with each other, making decisions with each other. We don't know where or how the breakdown between you happened, but it has to stop. Signed, your families, neighbors, taxpayers, constituents, and much more, and most of all, the children. You are all here to serve, teach, and lead by example. Thank you. Do I still have time? I didn't know I was going to read this till last minute, so I'm just reading it. I was going to just come up here as a parent and just say, it's heartbreaking that the thing with get my thoughts together, sorry, that letter threw me off. The thing with canceling the parent-teacher, thank you, my brain went away. Parent-teacher, you know, I have no quarrels with anybody. I'll be quick. No quarrels with anybody. I know the teachers work hard. I know this. I know that you guys feel as though you're doing the best you can. You need to look at this from a parent's perspective. We did not, some people filled out those forms because they felt they had no choice. It's not because, oh, it fit their schedule. No, we care enough about our children that we either took time out of work without pay or made it happen. Not easily. Not easily at all, changing shifts and everything. And as teachers, I understand y'all need to fight for what you need to fight. By all means, do it. But please, please, I'm begging you, stop using us parents as jab sticks. You know, even if it's some practice, past practice, whatever, it directly affects us parents. And then the stigma of it, it sticks to parents and community say, oh, the teachers don't care. I'm like, no, it's not the teachers don't care. They're trying to stand their ground. But on the other side, as a parent, please don't use us no more. If you're mad at admin, directly jab at them. Leave us out of the quarrels. Leave our children out of the quarrels and allow us parents to be part of our children's education. I love the teachers for what they do. By all means, I have the utmost respect for what you do. But this coin that the union or whoever made the decision to do, it was the wrong coin to flip on. And us parents are also saying that we're open to sit down and talk with the teachers and the union. Let us know what's going on so we can stand by you. We can fight with you, or we can sit there and tell you, wait, that's a bad choice. We don't like that. Look at us parents and children as if we are the stockholders. You know, we're the stockholders. We hold the cards that can help our community and our schools to be better. And we're here for you guys, either way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Jessica Coulter. I live on Beacon Street in Newport. I have 2 teenagers at Rogers High School. The first thing I want to say is I want to publicly thank the administration and special education. I completed my master's level internship this semester at Thompson Middle School, and I'm really happy with what I was able to witness and accomplish that semester. And I really, really, really love all the kids and all the teenagers. And when I came in with my pink hair, they said, why did you do that? And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was a great learning experience and will benefit me as I go into the field. So I wanted to say that on record first. The second thing I want to say or speak to, I didn't know Jennifer was going to come up here and speak to that. So the one thing that I'll touch on that she didn't touch on is that there's sometimes this back and forth between parents and our ability to how involved we want to be with our students and how involved we are in our children's education by lack of involvement or something like that. So what ends up happening when we cancel parent-teacher conferences or we have quarrels and we have sticking points to where parents who work during the day can't meet in the evening, what it ends up doing is making me feel as a parent who is in school, works a few jobs, has teenagers, has a busy life, is that, oh, you say that I don't care about my child's education because I don't show up. But then when I try to show up and do the whole 2 birds, 1 stone situation with everybody, 2 kids in high school, so different teachers, everything, you take that away from me, that I understand and I get it, and I'm also very pro-union, so that makes me feel as if I cannot win. If I try to participate in my child's education, I cannot win. If I step away from my child's education, then I really don't win. So I would really hope that going forward, regardless of where the union members lie and the administration lie or where our community lies, that we somehow come together so that parents can attend if they work during the day, parents can attend if they work during the night, and that we can somehow make this transition just a little bit more easier. And also, I was able to kind of go back and forth with a few of the teachers and kind of do the phone call thing. So that was really, really helpful, but it's so much easier when I can just one-stop shop and like Walmart it and call it a day. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. The next item on the agenda would be our student council update, and today with us we have Ms. Jane Lees.
Hi everyone, I'm Jane. I'm a senior at Rogers, and I am the student council president this year. I'm here to update you on all the exciting things happening at Rogers. The fall sports season recently wrapped up with some successful seasons. The girls' varsity tennis team was the only team that made playoffs, unfortunately, but it was their first time in 5 years, so that's good. And winter sports just started up. The boys' varsity basketball team has a home game tomorrow at 7, and the girls, which I play for, have a home game Friday at 5. Thursday at 7 o'clock at the YMCA, both the boys and girls' varsity swim teams will take on Middletown. The boys' varsity hockey co-op team has a home game at 7 o'clock Saturday at St. George's Rink. This past Saturday, the Viking Battalion JROTC drill meet took place. The Vikings captured second and third place trophies in 2 events. Tomorrow, there's the winter concert at Rogers, where the band, chorus, orchestra, ukulele, and guitar players will perform at 6:30 in the auditorium. Tomorrow at Pell, there's also the Newport Holiday Navy Band will be performing at 9:30 and 10 o'clock. This Saturday, leading into Sunday, there is a lock-in at Rogers where students will have the chance to eat, play games, and watch movies, and also sleep in the gym. Thursday is the first day of auditions for the spring musical, Little Mermaid, at Rogers. And our SAD program, Students Against Destructive Decisions, will start up again this Wednesday with their first meeting after school. I think 2 weeks ago there was a blood drive at Rogers, and that was really successful. There'll be another one probably in March. I think they usually have it. The attendance wars started up right after Thanksgiving break. The freshmen are in lead. The seniors are in last place, unfortunately. So they're giving incentives to try to get students to be on time and to come every day. And they're going to give prizes for the grade that has the most kids in school, the homeroom, and then for individuals if you have perfect attendance. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Jane.
I have a question for Jane.
In back.
So, as far as the attendance initiative, do you feel like it's working? Do you hear each student encouraging other kids to come to school, or what are your thoughts on it?
I haven't heard many kids talking about it. I don't know if seniors have senioritis, if that's why we're in last place. I think the freshmen are probably in first place because they can't drive, so they have no excuse for being late because your parents are going to bring you on time. Not making excuses for seniors. I'm on time. I haven't heard many people talking about it. They talked about it like right after the assembly, so maybe if we had another one to try to reinforce it and bring up the prizes again, then people would talk about it. That's it.
I think the day they had it was the day before Thanksgiving break, and I think
that wasn't the best day.
All the people that needed the assembly weren't there.
There was a lot of people absent that day, so that wasn't the best timing. But
thank you.
Thanks.
I got one thing for you, too, while you're there. Thank you, Mr. Boland. This year, why don't you guys get together and formulate for us how you feel about the time change, factoring in everything, factoring in your athletics, everything that's going on as far as Rogers High School is concerned, because we'd like to hear from the students as well, and I think it'd be kind of good to hear you guys talk maybe in the next meeting that we have.
The schedule as well?
Well, the schedule's another thing we're going to be looking at, and you guys, I'm imagining, going to be part of that focus group, but absolutely. Whatever you guys can put down in your capacity as your chairman of your class would be fantastic to hear right from you guys, too.
Sounds good.
Thank you
We'll
very
do
much.
that. Thank you.
Mr. Hanos, I'm
Yes.
sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to bring to your attention to the chair that we have our student leadership group here from Rogers listening to our conversations tonight. Young Voices is here, if you want to raise your hands back there. I see you all back there. Okay.
Awesome.
So they're going to be listening very carefully as she nods her head up, Jess nods her head up and down on what the students are going to bring forward. They're going to listen to part of your direction.
Yeah, so awesome. You heard that, and we'd love to hear from you guys. Very much so. Next, we're at the action item portion of the agenda tonight. The first item up for approval would be 4.1, approval of the Newport School Committee regularly scheduled meeting calendar 2018.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item?
I have a question. The primary election normally would be September 11th, but it was changed to a Wednesday. Is there any, because of the High Holy Day for the Jewish faith, is there any problem with our going forward on September 11th with the meeting?
You can raise if you want to change it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it would be a good idea. Yeah. Generally. Not to have a meeting on high holidays.
Can you state that for me? What?
Would
Would you like to change a date?
Which one? Which holy day is it? Rosh Hashanah. I know, I called Mrs. Nash this morning because I couldn't believe the primary election was being held on a Wednesday. I don't remember that ever happening. It's always a Tuesday. And the state said because of Rosh Hashanah, they switched it to Wednesday. So.
Maybe we should move it to Monday.
Monday might be a holiday. Oh, no, sorry.
A holiday?
September 11th.
Oh, because of
So
United States?
I think we should maybe give consideration to that, or changing it to,
That would be the 17th if you went to Monday, or the following Tuesday, if you wanted to keep it on Tuesdays, would be the 18th.
Yom Kippur begins on the 18th at sundown.
and what was
Yeah,
wrong with the
back-to-back
Monday?
days, they say.
That's fine. Monday's the 17th. There doesn't appear to be anything on that.
Why would,
Or the 10th?
wait a minute,
Doesn't the holiday start at
wouldn't Monday
sundown?
be the 10th? Oh, I see, you're saying the following week.
Correct.
Yes, the following week is Yom Kippur, the 18th.
So we could do it perhaps on the 10th? Does that
And that
cause a
begins at
problem?
sundown.
I don't know when, do you know?
Is that Veterans Day?
No, no. Does it start at Sunday?
This is September. That, I think, is September. Yeah. September.
We can bring it back at the next meeting?
Okay.
Yeah, I think
That
this
date?
meeting that we're discussing is in September. so I
Correct.
think we
Yeah.
can-
it-
We'll bring it back with choices.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
think you're going from sundown to sundown. I think we're safe with that.
Yeah, we need to approve our next meeting date. So subject to bring back, is that what we're talking about? To talk about that date, but January 9th is our next regularly scheduled.
Just approve as is, except for September, and we'll bring a new
to
date back to
Reconsider
you.
September 11th.
Yes.
Approve as read with reconsideration of September 11th. Do I have a
So moved.
second on that?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sylvia. The next item would be request for approval of policy updates and revisions. Now, this is from Dr. Flowers. I will state that we moved this off last meeting. There is it was a lot of work. There is a number of policy changes in here, and there are a couple that I believe we'll be having a motion to pull out and discuss separately and distinctly. But Ms. Flowers, I want to thank you and your committee for all the due diligence in all the hard work that was put into this and all the changes that were brought before us. We truly appreciate all the hard work, so I will, if there's anything that you'd like to point out in specific,
Yeah.
I do believe there's a couple of items we'd like to discuss prior to.
Well, I'd just like to comment that a month ago, I said that anyone who had a request to revisit some of the editing that had been done, or revisions, anyone on the school committee to get that to me. Mrs. Boland had very carefully indicated certain numbers, so when we had another policy subcommittee meeting a week ago, we even got her on the phone and we discussed it, and that worked out very, very well.
We also had offered to the general public who could access this right on the, on board docs, you know, through the school department website. Didn't get any comments at all. So again, if people in the future want any, to give some input, you can just, you know, contact us for that. So at this particular point, like we say, there are 100 pages, but some of the pages, there's no editing at all. There are just some minor changes of words. So at this point, we'll be looking for a motion to move forward on this.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and seconded discussion.
Yeah,
Ms. Boland.
I want to pull out, and I thought it was, do you remember the number on that?
1548, I believe.
1548,
And
right.
1542, if you want
fif-
handed or.
At 1542, that's where we're moving the,
What's that number again?
1548, 1542.
1542?
yes. Somebody
Okay, let me just see what
to
that.
make a motion. So, was somebody second?
Well, yeah, it's been moved and seconded.
Before we vote on them, we wanted to discuss those items separately.
Yeah, I want
Or
to,
just
I want to
pull
vote
them.
on them separately.
Okay.
Especially the 1548, to vote on it separately.
Okay.
Because I don't want to not vote on the rest of it.
There,
Or vote
Okay, so
negative.
1542 and 1548 to pull
right.
For separate votes.
for separate vote.
Any further
Are there any, yeah, are
other
there any
discussions
others?
on this or any other numbers? I actually did find another one that was 4690, and it was the evaluations of the administrators, and where it discusses that we actually changed it and modified it to the point where we're going to get the evaluations earlier, which was appropriate and important so that we could get the evaluations out on time. We could actually look at them. One of the issues that we had last season was in the policy, it doesn't say, it says that the superintendent shall review the evaluations and report on them. There was a request to view them, and it wasn't in the policy, and that was something that I overlooked up until just now, as far as being at least there to be viewed. And that's something that I just would like to discuss, I mean, as well.
4690, you said?
That's correct. 4690, it says evaluation of administrators, and it has to do with the fact that the superintendent was going to report on them, and I know that I personally would want
like
to
to view
review
them
them,
first.
some of them, or at least view them in the room.
Okay.
And the thought was that it wasn't in the policy, and I wasn't able to. And that's just something I think some of my
Yeah,
colleagues
it's
felt
best
that
to
they
put
should
it
be
in
able
the
to
policy, yeah.
look at it well, so.
So do you want to pull that one then for further?
I would just like to know what the group would want. I mean,
No,
I don't
yeah,
really
whatever.
want to make a big deal over it if it's, you know, if it's only me.
Why don't we pull it for further discussion?
If we have a
We had
motion on
brought
that and
it,
accept
Well,
that.
just add it to the ones we have.
We're pulling those for votes.
We're pulling those to vote on them separately.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think someone has a, well, yeah, I mean, we can pull it to vote
Okay,
on
I'll
it
put that
separately.
down.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Sure.
we can modify it right here, but.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought 4612 was just a clerical error.
Oh, that was coordinator and director.
We just need to switch those words, but
Yeah.
being that they were printed and put out on board docs for people to view, it was actually a typographical issue that I wanted to point out. That one's going to be amended and switch
Yeah.
coordinator to the word director.
Yeah,
Um,
so that will just
I
be
just wanted
taken
to
care
put
of.
that on the record.
Yeah.
So can we vote then to accept these with that correction and then vote on these separately?
On those
The other
three,
three.
yes. I would believe that would be appropriate if there's a motion and that, to affect that.
Yes. sure.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, can you clarify the motion, please?
The motion would be to vote on the remainder of the policy changes for the first reading, with the exception of the three, 1548, 1542, and 4690. Those three will be discussed further and voted on separately this
Each one
evening.
separately.
You want to
That's the
And a review.
the
Right.
spirit of the motion, correct?
Right, with the
4612.
clarification on the
4612.
wording on 4640.
Yeah.
With, yes,
12.
and along with the correction.
4612 is the correction.
4612.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, further clarification on the motion. Will the motion require that a vote takes place immediately on every policy but those three which were pulled? Or is the motion simply to pull those policies and continue with discussion on those other proposed changes.
As the motion's read right now, I believe the discussion will be further had on those 3 items that were taken out, and the rest would be accepted and read for the first time. With the one exception of 4612, which was just a clerical change.
So with respect to my colleagues, when will we have, as school committee members, the opportunity to discuss all of the other proposed changes, but for those 3 that you are pulling for further discussion?
Right now.
Okay, can we get, okay, as long as that's clear. The motion didn't seem to be, the motion that I heard indicated we would vote on those now.
Correct.
As long as we have discussion, I have no problem just supporting that motion. I don't want to vote on it right now. I would like to have discussion on those dozens of other policy changes. I have no problem accepting the removal of those 3 items, and I have no problem continuing with the discussion of the dozens of other proposed changes, so long as I said, we have the opportunity to discuss those proposed changes.
And I believe...
Mr. Chair, may I suggest to Mr. Collin that he would add his policies that he'd like discussed to the other 3 that we'll be discussing this evening?
With all due respect, Mr. Vice Chair, what I'm asking for is discussion on the dozens of, I have no policies that I would like to pull aside for further discussion or separate discussion. I simply want to ensure that we have a discussion on the dozens of changes that are being proposed before us tonight.
So would you want...
Where do you want us to begin?
We've discussed.
You want to go through each one of them and just point out the changes? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Dr. Flowers was kind enough to bring to this committee in June of this year a copy of Policy 1420, the Newport Public Schools Philosophy Ethical Pledge. Among the things that are found in that policy is school committee members will endeavor to make policy decisions only after full discussion at publicly held committee meetings. We as committee members have the luxury of seeing these policies that are proposed to be changed. I would like Dr. Flowers or somebody else who might be willing to explain to the public these policy changes. Why are you changing the policies? What policy are you changing and why are you changing them? If Dr. Flowers or anybody else can tell me that there was plenty of participation from the public at these meetings where we discussed these policy changes, then I will simply take back my request. But my belief is there were no members of the public at these meetings, which typically, I believe, take place during the working day.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Flowers. If I was just going to make one broad statement first, and then I wasn't at the meeting, and I'll allow you to opine on this. This is sometimes the issue that we have with public policy and public lawmaking and things of that nature, where these things are all readily available online. They're out there. The meetings are open to the public. And unfortunately, short of certain particular meetings that might be right up your alley, whether it be if we did a committee for school change times or whatever, I'm sure it would be full. But when you have a policy change, let's say, or some other thing, maybe facilities, I don't know what it might be, that virtually no one from the public is there. Yet we followed the Rhode Island state law and everything was out there in the open. Everybody's fully available to come in and have their input on it. And then it's put up in a public place. You have to be able to view the items. The public needs to be able to see what it is. So with that being said, short of going through and reading every page of this document and going through the reasons why these things were changed, and that was why we had those meetings, so that we can conduct our business. We only have 12 meetings a year, 11, I suppose, because we missed one in July this year, to get the order of business done with 3 hours with very full and heavy agenda. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Flowers, because I wasn't at all of these meetings, but that's basically what we do in everything that we do. Everything's open. There's nothing behind any closed doors. There's no curtains we work behind. It's in the open. So Dr. Flowers, if you want to, please let us know how many people from the public showed up, how many people from the public desired to have their input heard, That's not a good question. How many people from the public did put their voice and have it heard? We don't know how many people would have liked to, but how many people actually did?
Usually you don't have standing room only at policy meetings. I couldn't have explained it better than you did. As I said, when we first got into this section of the agenda, all the committee members were urged to email me, call me, whatever, text me to say, this is what I want worked on. I've got nothing at all except the references that Mrs. Boland has so kindly given. And she was on the phone with us that particular day. We called her because she could clarify a number of issues, which I have a feeling, I pretty much think that perhaps you agreed with on that particular item. If you want, I can go through and believe, people, I'm not going to read 100 pages, so fear not. As I said 1 month ago, a number of these changes, if you want to call it that, pretty basic. In one of the, this is what, no, this is in number 1200. I'm not going to read everything, so let's not worry about that. It was changing, for example, standards and performance indicators to Common Core state standards. And you put in pre-K through grade, I say pre-K through grade 12 or pre-K through grade 14 when that is part of the effect that some of these changes have. I'm going down now to our school committee regular meetings. We had even edited this a month ago to say when our meetings are going to begin, that we will not go beyond 9:30 p.m. or extend beyond, excuse me, beyond 3 hours. Once in a while, we have a 5 o'clock meeting, so then we would say go until 8 o'clock. And we also put in about the pre-meeting that's held at 6:15 to review the agenda. And a couple of people came tonight. That's open, the door's open, and that's fine. And all school committee members are expected to attend those. Was change of a title on another policy, 1542, special and emergency meetings. And that one, I believe, I'm not going to go into detail with that right now because that's one that's been, it's been a request to pull it. Let's see now. I just want to make sure this behaves here. The order of business at a meeting.
I'm sorry, Dr. Flowers.
It was
That's the one with
clarifying what we've done all along, that any topics, let me just back up a bit.
That particular one was one of the ones that we had asked to reserve.
1545, yeah, this formalizes what we've been doing. It's like you say, public comment items that are not on the agenda.
So I think it's suffice to say, Dr. Flowers, that these, I mean, without going through every item, that there's a motion on the floor.
Little things,
barring
exactly.
a different motion to go through and do what you're prepared to do and read it out.
Some lines are crossed out because they are not relevant. Another page listed all the schools we had, all the elementary schools. They are no more, so those are just taken out. So much of that is it's just cleaning up the document, that's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Collin.
At the core of what we do, we are a policy-making organization, so changing policies is something that we should take very seriously and allow the public to see exactly what we are doing. There was never a question of whether we advertised the meetings correctly regarding these policy changes or whether we had the right to do these policy changes. The question, of course, becomes when, in my opinion, when you are suggesting 100 pages, and it is very convenient to perhaps say we had to change a comma or a semicolon here or there, but there are major policy changes which are being proposed this evening. And for the public not to be sufficiently, and you may disagree, anybody may disagree, notified, yes, we did publicly advertise the meetings, but this is a major change at the core, again, of what we do. We're a policy-making committee, and we are changing 100 pages worth of policy, some of which is very significant. And yet the public, I challenge anybody in the audience to be able to almost immediately, without too much research, tell us how to find these proposed policy changes on the Newport Public School Department's website. What we are doing with respect to the way we've handled these policy changes is what we're doing with regard to some of the underlying changes themselves. We are shutting the public out. We are being undemocratic, and this, I believe, is a major miscalculation on the part of the committee.
May I ask you a question?
Thank you.
May I ask him a question?
Ask the chair.
Did you attend any of the policy meetings? All school committee members are told exactly when every subcommittee meets. You certainly were welcome to come in, Mr. Collins.
I think Dr. Flowers knows exactly how I feel about these policy changes. I made my opinions known at the last meeting, and I mean, like the majority of the folks in the hall or in the cafeteria this evening, and the majority of folks watching on the television, people who work don't go to 10 o'clock in the morning meetings or 1 o'clock in the afternoon meetings. The reason you set a meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning, and every single one of the council and school committee liaison meetings that I have seen, I'm not sure about every one of the policy subcommittee meetings, but frequently our school department, our school committee meetings are held at hours at which parents who work simply cannot attend, and that is wrong.
Thank you. Moving to the motion that's on the floor, we currently have a motion on the floor to withhold those 3 items, to change but vote on that one particular 4612. It's been made and seconded. There's been some discussion.
Are we voting to approve?
Yes, Ms. Sylvia, we are going to, as the original motion stated, Mr. Collin had a question on it, stick to the motion, read these for the first time, with the exception of those 3, with the discussion we just had. Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now.
So the discussion items would be 1548. Do we have a motion to accept that, 1548?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Now we have discussion. Ms. Boland?
Yeah, so this is, I mean, this is a rather large, this is my whole screen just went blank here, so, yeah. So, okay, thank you for giving that to me. So this is a rather large change, and I'm very concerned because it forces, the way it used to be, if a member wanted to put an item on the agenda, they would give it to the chair, and then it would, be on the agenda. Now, we've had some problems sometimes because sometimes maybe too many items get on at once, and the chair doesn't have control of that. So that is a concern. But the biggest concern here is that now it takes 3 that shall be added, 2 additional members plus yourself. There's also something called a rolling quorum, where you go and you get, so that's basically you getting your idea for something to put on the agenda, and then you would go and solicit 2 people to sponsor, back you up. It doesn't mean they would vote for you, but likely you're going to be going, explaining to them and trying to get it. It might be somewhat of a violation of the open meeting laws, and you're only getting 3, but between you there's 3, I should say, and it takes 4 to become a, well, it is a violation even if you really discuss it with 1 or 2, but 4 gets you into big trouble because that's like holding a meeting. So I have a concern with that. I also think that I may not always agree with my fellow members about what they're putting on, but they were elected by the members of this community, and they have a right to put things on the agenda because they were elected by somebody who believed, in them, and, they rightfully got into that office. So doesn't mean, sometimes you'll see me like seconding a motion from someone, and that's only so that we can have discussion on it. Doesn't mean that I'm going to support it, but I am concerned. I do not like that we are now going to change this to having 2 extra members. You have to solicit before the meeting, and the chair also can just say he's going to put it on too. I mean, this is only when he denies that request.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah, so I want to make that clear. It's only when he denies the request, but we just don't, you don't want to put things into play that have a lot of, well, play in them, that things that can change and, you know, you find yourself regretting having put that in. So I will not be supporting that.
Mrs. Gaines?
I just wanted, Mrs. Boland did bring up the word deny. That is the crux behind this change. If a member wants to put something on and it is agreed by the, it's denied by the chair for whatever reason to put that item on the docket, on the agenda, then that person gets 2 other people. I'm not opposed to lowering that to 2. If you think 3 is a problem, I would support, but I think if something is denied, that having another school committee person endorse that item gives it strength to be on the agenda. And I think we have to be very careful about allowing every single request for an agenda item to go forward, or we could never meet the other parts of our goal of 3 hours to a committee to a meeting. There has to be some control for an agenda to have a meeting that makes sense.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Dr. Flowers?
Yeah, it's pretty much saying what I said again last month, that I'm going to hazard a guess, I might be totally wrong, but I think most of us, if we say, well, I'd like to have a particular item really brought before the committee in public, and, you know, you might say, is it really worth trying it? And you might even say, what do you think about the feasibility of bringing this before? Doesn't mean you're going to get a decision. This actually is pretty much what is done on the council. You see the co-sponsoring all the time. And some of them have said, it lends a certain validity to what you're going to say. And I think it keeps each one of us on our toes, not just to put something in that has already been discussed, voted on. You might want to revisit a particular issue, but just to keep adding in things. I don't see that this would even have to be cited that much, really, because it does say any denied request will be put on, as long as you can get a couple of other people say, yeah, I'll sponsor it. It doesn't, I think, as Mrs. Boland said, it doesn't mean you're going to vote for it necessarily. I think we're all trying to look at all sides of every issue. There was one other item in that next paragraph about the agenda and supportive material written and distributed to the school committee at least 5 business days in advance of the meeting, et cetera. That's an important point, too, so that we all have, you know, practically almost a week to read all of this material, so that if you have a number of pages, you can get through it, and then if you have any questions, that can be addressed. So this is not something that I don't see it being having to be cited too much if each one of us is just using common sense when it comes to putting items on an agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Carlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to my colleagues, Dr. Flowers and Mrs. Gaines, and I respectfully disagree. If there are too many items on an agenda, extend the time of the school committee meeting. And if you don't want to be here past a certain time, don't run for the Newport School Committee. We can have other meetings. There are literally endless ways to deal with potentially too many agenda items or too many items being on an agenda. Even bodies that are horrible at giving the opposition a chance to express their views. The United States Congress, dominated by the Republican Party, doesn't give the Democratic Party, in many instances, and there can be plenty of arguments on this, the opportunity to have votes on proposed legislation. The Rhode Island General Assembly, dominated by the Democrats, does not give the Republican Party, the Republican minority, the opportunity, or I'm sorry, does not allow for votes if they in fact disagree with the legislation. But neither of those bodies, and no Democratic body in this country that I know of, effectively prohibits the introduction of legislation. This is what my colleagues are attempting to do tonight. They do not like the type of proposals that I, or perhaps others, propose to put on the agenda. So their answer is, let's make it as difficult as possible, if not impossible, to have these agenda items addressed. And I will tell you that not only is it undemocratic, but it's unfair to the people who vote to put us here. It's not as though I'm asking for my colleagues to vote on agenda items that deem me the most handsome person or the smartest person in the room. Recent examples include requests from the public that I place on the agenda items which will deal with the Thompson Middle School grouping problems. And by enacting this proposal, make no, or should there be no, or there should be, I should say, no doubt about it. What they are doing is they are effectively ending the ability for the public to come to me and ask for items that my colleagues don't agree with to be placed on the agenda. It is so obvious that a basic responsibility of an elected official is to be able to place legislation forward to his or her colleagues. It is so obvious that it's probably not even written in plain English in front of us. If the majority disagrees with proposals or with legislation, let them vote it down. But this is completely and totally undemocratic, and it is anti-taxpayer, anti-voter. I bring you back to what Dr. Flowers brought before us in June of 2017. As we were taking a summer break, she encouraged us to look at Policy 1420, one of the items in Policy 1420 I referenced earlier. But specifically relating to this discussion, Dr. Flowers reminds us that as school committee members, we should encourage the free expression of opinion by all committee members and seek systematic communications among the committee and students, staff, and all elements of the community. What we are doing this evening by accepting this proposal is the exact opposite of free speech. We are shutting the public off from their opportunity to use every member of the school committee to have discussion on items they are concerned with. I urge my colleagues to vote against this bad proposal.
Mr. Gomes?
I was just going to ask Mr. Galvin for an opinion on whether this constitutes a violation of the open meeting laws or a rolling poll, similar to Mrs. Boland's comments.
Well, it's not an inappropriate, sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's not an inappropriate observation that the more members of the committee that are involved in the process of putting something on the agenda, it could start getting close to that. The spirit of the law contemplates not violating a rolling quorum scenario, so you can avoid the situation just by the proper actions. But the more you have involved in that process by virtue of your rule, there's a tendency it could possibly occur. So the higher the number, the closer it comes to having an opportunity for a violation. The lower the number, less of an opportunity for a violation.
Because,
Is that good?
comment on that. So, because what would happen if I call Jo Eva and try to get her to help support me, and I give her all the reasoning, and she says, no, I won't, and then I have to go to Kathy, I could end up going through all 7 members of the school committee you know, and in essence, you know, hit more than 4 at one time in order to get my vote. Does that make sense?
But you're not getting a vote.
But I'm not
asking
getting
for
the
a
vote, but I'm talking to you about an issue and trying to get your vote to get it on the school committee. So it's not just the 2 people, it might involve more than 2 to get it on the, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Just one little comment.
Dr. Flowers?
Yes. I'm going into my 10th year, and I don't recall any time when my colleague to the right has ever not been given sufficient time to express his opinion. Thank you.
Okay, right before the vote, I certainly have a couple things that I would like to state on this too. I too feel the same way as, at least I believe that I had made myself perfectly clear on gaining 2 co-sponsors. That's only if the superintendent, in cooperation with the chair, when they prepare the agenda, if they choose not to put one of those items on the agenda, you'll need to come back with 2 co-sponsors. I can't imagine any other democratic way than having this done in the wide open. Making a big to-do about it 30 days ago, pulling it off the agenda, having it all part of social media and whatnot, that this was not something that was done in any way, shape, or form. That is not absolutely the way the government's set up, wide open, in front of everybody, with the cameras rolling, the doors open, and people to be here. So although I may or may not agree with this, at this point, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of accepting
No listening.
15.48 as it's written, which is, yeah, I'm sorry, 1548 as it's written, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2. It's 5-2. Thank you. The next item up for discussion would be 1542, which is...
Get back up to that.
I can tell you what the problem with that one is.
Okay.
It needs to say, okay, so.
Well, can we have a motion to accept it? Mrs. Gaines, seconded by Mr. Gomes. Discussion on the item, Ms. Boland, I'm sorry.
Right, so in that one, it says, in the second paragraph,
Notice?
no, it's for the, about when you're gonna, no, it's in the third paragraph.
Third paragraph,
This,
okay.
announce in advance and post through a newspaper of general circulation and, instead of and, we want to put and or, because we really don't use the newspaper anymore, and that says that we have to put it in the newspaper. So can we add the word or?
Yeah.
I don't think or will radically change the policy. Dr. Flowers, would you like to? We can certainly make a motion and support it, I mean.
Yeah, I think we said announce in advance, well, we put and post, that clarified it, because it has been the policy, so to speak, of the, in the local press, the Newport Daily News does list all of the community meetings. So those are in, I mean, even policy and finance and all those other wellness committees. So I feel, this is my opinion only, I'm not sitting here discussing the merits of it, that having the newspaper cited as well as other means that are appropriate, and that's what the Secretary of State cite, the Newport School Department cite. And of course, again, it goes on further in their paragraph, that a copy of the meeting notice are posted in public places, school administration building, and then 2 other public places, the City Hall and the library. So, and then we added in the Rhode Island, excuse me, the Rhode Island Secretary of State's open meeting system. So there are all kinds of controls to make sure that everyone who is truly interested in these meetings is made aware of it. So I think saying or the newspaper would kind of remove that that particular medium from some of the public's easy access.
Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If I
Mrs.
might
Gaines.
give a little history here, when the policy was first redone back in 2000. It was the law then that the
Yeah.
school committee had to post in the newspaper. It is no longer state law that we do that. But since the newspapers do post meetings,
All the communities.
I see no problem that we have this language in our policy. It doesn't mean that we have to do it. If we, I mean, we don't have to do it legally. We have to do it because it's in our policy to do it. But what harm is there
Yeah.
in letting the newspaper know when we're having a meeting?
Well, as long as they're doing it now, I didn't realize, it used to be that we paid for those advertisements.
We had to
Well, this
do
is
it.
just
It was
posted.
law.
Right, but you're saying now they all end up in the newspaper?
Anyway,
Yeah, they always
Whether or
have
not-
this. They do it for all the communities.
Flexibility.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Sylvia?
I would support it,
No, because then you'd have an illegal
adding
meeting.
or, and/or, in the event our daily news reporter, for some reason, misses the notice, at least we're covered if it's
That's what was my
posted
point
other
was.
places. So I would suggest and/or.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Carlin?
we also have a reporter from Newport this week who covers our meetings.
Oh, you're
So,
right. I'm
I
sorry.
know Ms. Sylvia
Yeah.
did not mean to omit her, but
I
she
did
is
not.
present, and she is here for all our meetings.
The way, okay, the way I see it too is if it's and/or, it's almost suggestive that we don't need to. The way I look at it is you actually restrict it. When it says and, it'll be in the paper and. You're going to say and/or. In my opinion, it's and, or maybe you don't. So I'd rather post it more places than not.
yeah.
Right.
That's just the way I would read it.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions on the motion?
I would just suggest to you that the way it's phrased right now, you can't rely on the newspaper putting it in. You have to post it yourself
Right.
as an expense. You have to take that action
Correct.
under this language.
This you just,
So how would
can't
you,
rely
do
on
just
the
let them
newspaper
know.
putting it in.
you have a nice suggestion how to fix it?
Take it out.
The and/or is the
Is the
easiest way.
fix.
You're not obligated to do
Right.
it. You're adding an additional obligation. If that's what you so choose, so be it.
Okay.
Okay, so and/or it is.
Well, so you've heard the opinion of the legal counsel, and now Ms.
May I
Boland
amend-
has a suggestion of a motion, which we
May I
perhaps should,
amend my motion?
what is your motion?
My motion was to accept this. My motion now would be to accept this with the addition of or.
Placed
in
in
paragraph
strategically in paragraph 3 after and. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sylvia. Any discussion on that?
I can live with it.
Mr. Carlin?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be voting against the proposed policy change, not because I disagree with the nature of making sure that people are aware of our meetings and how we advertise them, et cetera. I think this discussion is great. I'm voting against all these policy changes because there was no public input. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that particular amendment to that motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Carlin, now back to the main motion to accept it with the insertion of and/or. Is there a motion for
So
that?
moved.
Ms.
Second.
Sylvia? Second by Ms. Boland? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
One. Thank you very much. I believe the final one up for discussion is 4690. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Ms. Sylvia?
Second.
Mr. Gomes, my question, well, my motion would be if we could just, in the second paragraph, where it says at the end, it's the superintendent shall review the evaluations and report on them and on the evaluation instruments used to the school committee no later than April 15th, period. My amendment would be, said evaluations shall be available for review during this meeting by the Newport School Committee members upon request. So my question would be that we be able to review these particular documents during that meeting if we so choose. They're going to be there anyway. The superintendent has to report out on them. So my motion would be, the amendment to this would be, said evaluations shall be available for review during this meeting upon request by a school committee member.
Second.
Question.
Do I have a second on that?
Yes, second on that.
Second on that, Ms. Boland. Discussion?
Question, you're saying that these evaluations would have been done? completed.
They're supposed to be
Alright.
done and reported out to us that
Okay,
evening
alright.
at this particular meeting.
So obviously, you're talking about the administrators' evals.
Correct.
To what degree would they be discussed? Is this something that should be?
I'm asking that they can be, I can see them that night during that
You
meeting.
can see them, I see.
I'm simply asking that I shall be able to review this during that meeting
Okay.
upon request. The superintendent, I would expect, would have these evaluations with her. I'm not asking to take them home or have them sent to me. I'm just asking that I have the ability, or anyone would have the ability to simply review an administrator's evaluation upon request. That's the spirit of what I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just
So,
saying,
Mrs.
it
Gay?
wouldn't be.
I have a problem with this
Yeah.
in that this is confidential information. And as a school committee, we are not necessarily privy to that kind of information. That's why it has always been the practice for the superintendent to report to the school committee on these evaluations. I think there would have to be an agreement with each person as to who sees their personnel files. That's what this amounts to. And I'm not sure we are, I'm not sure it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Galvin, if you wouldn't mind.
Mr.
We
Chair.
need the longer cord for you.
No, that's okay.
Maybe flip seats.
Yeah.
Just move down one seat. Yeah.
In the, dealing with this particular policy in the past, one of the things of concern was a potential, as Mrs. Gaines referred to, potential expectation of privacy relative to the administrator in those evaluations. However, one of the things that helped create that potential expectation of privacy was this particular policy didn't contemplate or allow for the committee to look at them. If the committee so chooses and decides to go along with your suggested amendment, that would help eliminate that expectation of privacy relative to that issue. So it would tend to eliminate that expectation of privacy if this is what the committee so chooses to do. The way it currently stands and is currently read, there is a degree of expectation of privacy on it. If you choose to amend your policy, it reduces or eliminates that. I don't know if that's responsive to your request.
How would that relate then to all personnel? Would it just be administrators?
That's all this policy deals with.
That's what this one is about.
So the next step then, as I see it, if we were to not respect the privacy of the administrators, would be to do the same thing with teachers.
Well, you're respecting the privacy of administrators. It's just whether, and you've created that in many respects by virtue of this policy. Again, this is a decision of the committee to make. And if you decide to reduce or minimize or eliminate that, that's a choice you're making.
And
if you keep it as is, my opinion in the past has been there is an expectation of privacy. If you choose to amend it, then you're eliminating that. So that's a choice for the committee to make.
So we're saying to our employees,
well, in this case, to your administrators.
In this case, to the administrators,
This is the policy
that
for-
you have no expectation for privacy of your personnel files.
In relation to this evaluation process?
No, if we change this.
This is
That's
for the
what we're
evaluation
saying.
process, yes. For the evaluation process.
Not the personnel file.
Yeah.
It's not going into the personnel file for any other reason than for evaluations.
Oh, okay.
It's limited to this process, this evaluation review process.
And if I might add, I don't want to look into anybody's personnel file. I'm merely looking at the instrument that the superintendent utilized to evaluate Ms. Nash. Just her evaluation, she's a great blah, 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 you know, why couldn't I look at that? I don't want to delve into any personal information whatsoever, but I feel as administrators, it's important that we know how our administrators are doing, and 9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time, I wouldn't care to ask, but there were at least one instance where I just wanted to see that particular evaluation. I had a question on a particular administrator. The administrator is no longer with us for reasons that I had suspected, and I'm not sure if they were in the evaluation or not. You guys have the right, this is the democracy, to vote on it, whether you like it or not, and that's all that I'm asking, and I appreciate the opportunity to at least put this motion or this amendment in front of you.
Okay, question. So you're looking at the, what do they call it, the instrument, the paper, what the evaluation process is, not the particulars. Is that what you're saying?
I am looking at, I think it's pretty clear, maybe I'm not being clear enough. The superintendent has a method where she evaluates somebody, or he evaluates somebody.
Yeah.
There has to be a paper for that. It has nothing to do with the personnel file, the person's pay scale, or any of that. It might be on there because of how long their contract is. I don't know. All I'm looking at is when they evaluated this individual, that instrument that they used, that I would be able to review that one document, just that evaluation document. That's it, nothing else.
That's different, okay.
No, the document,
Yeah.
not the form, just that evaluation.
I don't think it's that complicated.
Do you want me to, may I read something that I think you said? I believe I heard, the superintendent shall review the evaluations, have them available for review by the Newport School Committee, and the evaluation instruments used to the school committee no later than April 15th. That's what you were requesting, correct?
Right.
So that's the change. No, I just wrote that based upon the request, and that's what I believe the chair is asking.
Superintendent's reviewing this document behind the concrete wall, telling us everything that we should believe everything, and I'm not questioning that. She's giving us, she's reading off a sheet of music. She's not pulling this out of the air. What is she reading, and why can't I see it? That's my only question. If the majority feels that that's appropriate, then that's fine. I say we move the question at this point. I don't want to kill any more time on it. I thought I was clear, but.
So then, really, in essence, that could be one of the backup things that we get before, we always get, say,
We don't.
oh, this is, oh, no, I'm not saying, but that's something that could be done.
I don't want that. I don't want to take it. I don't want it emailed to me. I don't want anything
No,
other
you're
than
not going to
the
say
ability to
people's
look at it.
details. You're just going to say, hey, how do we evaluate this particular level of administration? Okay,
Sandra,
here's
you're
the
not
sheet.
hearing what David said.
That's
You're
it.
not hearing what he said.
He wants to see the actual evaluation.
Filled in for the person?
Yes.
Oh, I understand. He's saying no.
No.
That's what he wants.
My job on the fire department is to evaluate. I do it all the time. I have sheets. I look at them. I share them with the employee. I look at the thing. They see what I said. They tell them if I thought they were great in one aspect and terrible in another aspect. It's a tool to help the person learn to become a better, stronger firefighter.
Right.
I want to see what our superintendent is doing with our administration. I want to see if she's doing the same thing, and I cannot do it. It's not allowed. I don't know. And then I'm asked to evaluate my superintendent on how she does. I have an evaluation, and I can't answer that question. I'm going to pull it off the evaluation because I don't know. I know she told me, but I really don't know. And this is nothing against Superintendent Germain personally, but I'm that kind of person. I got to see. You know, maybe we can give her offerings on a better methodology or how to do this if we have employees that maybe not toe in line are doing better than expected. That's really all it's about. It's just a job that I've been doing for about 14 years on the fire department is evaluating my own members. I just
Mr.
want to
Chair.
see. That's it.
Mr. Chair, I don't think you'd like it if the city council members walked in and said, okay, let's see these evaluations.
I would.
Well, I don't think they'd be
I'd give them
allowed.
mine.
You'd want to see the details about the employees. That,
All right, so I guess let's just, I don't want to get into that part of the debate. I want to
Mr.
make sure
Chairman?
that you guys understand where I'm at. I'm not 100% sure you guys understand where I'm at, so that's not really important. I think we should go for the vote. Mr. Collin, you had a question?
No question.
Comment?
Yes, comment. I did not realize that this oral amendment would be made this evening. I previously stated I'd be voting no against all of the policies that were proposed because of a lack of public input. But this proposed amendment that you raised, Mr. Chairman, has been addressed by this committee in public session on many occasions. In fact, there was a 4-2 vote prior to Mr. Gomes being on the school committee in, if I'm correct, May of 2016, after about a year's worth of debate on this very subject. And I'm not sure if it was you that proposed it at the time, but it was collectively supported. So I will support your proposed amendment. And I thank you for putting it forward.
If there's no further discussion, I would say we would call that amendment to the motion to get this thing going. Are there any other questions or discussion on that, on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
3, so 4 to 3, the amendment passes.
No, 42.
So, you have to go
There's
back
7
to
people here, it's 4 to 3. The vote went Bolin, yes, Hanos, yes, Gomes, yes, Carlin, yes, Gaines, nay, Sylvia, nay, Dr. Flowers, nay. That's a 4 to 3.
It's okay. All right, so you want them
I mean,
to
my
have,
personal
Okay.
We weren't allowed to. So the next thing would be to accept this policy as it's been amended. Is there a motion to accept as amended?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All
Mr.
those in
Chairman?
favor?
Aye.
discussion.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll say it anyway. I wanted to make sure your amendment was, in fact, put before the body. I assume you have the votes at this point. I'm going to vote no, based on the fact, as I said earlier, that the public was not involved in the overall discussion about policy changes.
All those in favor of accepting 4690 as amended, as it's read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
5-2. Thank you. I believe that's it for policies. Did I miss any? Okay.
That's it, so all the rest can be.
Getting on with the-
But there'll be
Once it's
the
amended.
second reading
Yes.
next month, so again, if there are any
Changes that
tweaking, please.
Please forward them to
Public,
Dr. Flowers.
You know, it's right there, you want to know how to get it, we'll show you how to get it.
The
Yeah,
next,
access.
the next items are action items. I'm going to ask Mr. Harrop if he'd please come up to the rostrum. Be 4.3, approval for award to furnish and install security gates associated with fencing, bollards at Rogers High School. Administration. Is there a motion to approve this currently? No?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion was made. Is there a second? I'll second it for the sake of having Mr. Harrop here. And discussion on it, Mr. Harrop, if you could just
Yes,
go
I
over-
do have discussion. I think it's really important at this point in time. We have 3 projects proposed for award as standalone projects, but they have to be looked at collectively. They're all CIP projects, 3 of them. We have this particular one, 18023, which is the fence, gates, other things at Rogers. We have 1807, which is surveillance cameras and remote door locks at Rogers. And we have 1803, which is parking lot lighting for Claiborne Pell. In checking the CIP funds in the line item for Newport schools, which I get a copy of the CIPs for the entire city on about a weekly basis, there was $60,067. Last month, school committee approved the change order for J.G. Edwards. After 15 additions and deductions, it ended up being $264 net add. So that drops us down to $59,803. These 3 projects altogether add up to just over $92,000. So it's important to look at them collectively and prioritize and make a determination of which ones you really want to do. Now, my understanding is that there was a bit of an emphasis on Rogers, and I'm not going to talk about that. That came from within the administration, and that may be the right thing to do. But the 2 Rogers projects, the gates and the fencing and the security cameras, if as recommended, are awarded, there is not enough CIP funds. Keeping in mind that my direction is, although it's a line item for schools, I still have to do a CAF or a council action form and submit it to the city council after it's approved by the school committee. And there's not enough funds to award those. So if we moved forward with those 2, I would say that there's one piece of the fencing, which is $1,800 to do the throwing fence. I added that in because it needs to be done. It's for, you know, throwing the hammer so they don't hit the gym with the hammer when they throw it. If we take that out, then you can award both projects at Rogers High School, and in the spring, go out with the fence for the track for throwing as a separate O&M project because it's well below capital improvement level. So I just wanted to set that table before you're moving forward and having everything approved, knowing that there's not money there to award all of these projects right now.
Mr. Gomes?
Mr. Haber, could you explain the capital repair account? Are we obligated because of the cost of the project, or what puts it into that category?
So if you look at the city's budget book, and I'm going off memory, so, you know, don't crucify me if I don't get it exactly right. Any project that is over $15,000 and makes a long-lasting improvement that increases the value of a property is it a capital improvement. In other words, I know all of the carpets in the classrooms here at Pell need to be replaced. They're a safety issue. It would cost about $40,000. In the city's world, that does not classify as a capital improvement because that's not a permanent improvement that's going to increase the value of the facility. So based upon the city's language in their budget book, that's how I understand the capital improvements. Everything that's proposed on these 3 CIP projects would be an increase in value, make a permanent improvement to the facility. So they definitely meet the criteria for capital improvement. It's just that right now, there's not enough money in that small account to award all of them.
So I have a question.
Ms. Boland?
So does safety fall under that, though? Like, in capital improvement, like if we determine that it's a severe safety issue, and I'm going to tell you that my boys both played track, you know, did track, and that is a huge issue, that fence, and that needs to get repaired before any kid goes out there.
But there's 2 pieces to that. There's an and. It's over $15 and a permanent improvement. So yes, that could fall into that, but the fence by itself, if you look at ad alternate number 2 in that bid, for the throwing fence, that's $1,800. Granted, it will come in higher if it's bid as a separate project, but it's certainly not going to be over $15,000. So it's not going to be in that and category to be classified as a capital improvement.
All right, but
so you could go out for that as a separate project using the repair and maintenance money.
Just so we don't have to discuss it all night, I'm going to definitely endorse making sure that gets done right away because it's a safety issue. We've had issues out there. And we can't, especially now, once you acknowledge it in public and say it's a safety issue, you really...
Right. Well, so right now, looking at the Rogers repair and maintenance account, last time I checked, it was just over $50,000 left in it. There's more than enough money to award that in the spring. But I also look at the school itself for the students that go into the school buildings and the safety and security of the school building itself and the conditions within the school building and the learning environment that they have. That's the most important part. Yes, there is a safety concern with the throwing fence, but that's limited to when they're throwing, whereas the school is an everyday when there is occupants in that building going to school.
Right, but not many people are throwing 50-pound hammers in the school. They are out there. And we had a child hit last year.
Right. So. When we look at all of the things that came back from secure education consultants when they did the security assessment of the school for us last year, a lot of the things that we're trying to implement right now support the recommendations of the secure education consultants.
All right.
So there's a couple of questions. I think you're going to have some suggestions, and then maybe we can get the money down by maybe eliminating certain ad alternates. But I have a question, one for the superintendent, as far as some of these items we had requested from our new principal down there to try to gain some control of the school and limit the entrances to the school, much of which was given to us in that safety report that you worked with that company to give to us, and the amount of doors and trying to secure them. That would be like the swipe passes and some cameras and stuff to assist the administration in watching that stuff. Some of the other stuff I can see in here also with the tubular gates and bollards is to keep people from driving around the backside of the school and getting, limiting their ability to drive around. Doesn't limit the fire service apparatus or anything, because it'll be a key for them to get back and forth, but just to eliminate the traffic that goes back there. But then again, I'll go back to the superintendent. I believe there was a means and a ways for us to have funds that we may or may not already have, and we can come back at a further meeting to, there are more funds to do, certain, like a one-time purchase if we wanted to do that. Do we have the funding within, and maybe we can't do that this evening, we have to probably put it on an agenda, but
Yes.
do we have the ability? I understand that Mr. Harrop is following a budget, that's his job, and he did a great job with J.G. Edwards. He got all that stuff done for just a couple of $100 more, which we thank you. You weren't here the other evening, but he said thank you for doing that. But there needs to be a way. I think it's important that we kind of tighten up our security down at the school, just because we're sitting here with a document, a lengthy document that explains to us what we need to do. So, and then, you know, there's a fire code violation of a door upstairs that we'll talk, there's certain things that we need to have done that we just need to have done.
Right. So at the following meeting, I would recommend, if you approve the projects going forward, that you also ask that I move forward and request some balances from your fund balance. So you would have to approve the fund balance. We could put that on.
To offset the
To
cost.
offset
If in
and
fact we
allocate towards
go
these
over.
projects.
Okay.
I want to also say would be a very appropriate use of a fund balance, because you don't want to ever use a fund balance for something that you're going to have to repeat the next year, because it increases your budget. So this would be a very appropriate use. It's a one-time thing that has to get done, or something like the throwing fence. It doesn't have to be replaced again, probably for the life of the school.
So, Mr. Hanos, I'd just like to add, so if you take a look, and it's in the packet, the sketch I had done, I had walked the exterior of Rogers High School with Principal Vance and with Jeff Watts. The areas where we located the fencing, if all of the exterior doors outside those fences stay locked and secured, they will be able to have free flow interior circulation in the building inside the fences with the doors open and still be secure, and then they will have the 2 secure entries with the remote door unlocking systems, one for registration and one at the main entry of the school. So in essence, we're accomplishing what was given to us by Secure Education Consultants.
So would that be a net savings then? Like, let's say for instance, on Alt 1, the black fencing, vinyl fencing to go between the wings. Is that in order so that you don't have to secure those doors? You basically put up a fence and you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone? I mean, is that your approach on this?
That part of it is that approach. The other part of it is because the students have to be able to get between classes, and instead of having to always stay on the interior hallways of the building, which sometimes, say you're going from the auditorium over to the Newport project, or from the library to the Newport project, if you're walking all the way through the school, that takes a long time. If you have select areas with fencing where they can use those exterior passageways, it's a lot shorter of a walk, and they're able to get to their classes, leave those doors open, and still be secure because it'll be behind the fencing.
I think there's a couple of questions. I guess one of my questions is if we're, I don't know that we're going to, you're asking us to vote on these in a bundle or separately?
Well, I'm not saying that they have to be voted on in a bundle, but I'm saying when you think about awarding them with current funds that are available, just prioritizing, if you want to take care of Rogers, it makes sense to do the security cameras and the door locking mechanisms at the same time as the fencing. Having security engineering classes, because of my military past and having the secure bases, I can tell you that security works in layers, and one without the other would not be a good expenditure of funds. They both need to be done as layers of protection against any threat that may be on the outside in order for them to be effective. So again, I'm just recommending that if you are to move forward, I would recommend those 2 together. And we talked about the extra lighting, which it is needed. I took a look at the back of the parking lots across the street at Pell. They do need more lighting over there, but that's over $31,000. And if you do that, you can't do both of the projects at Rogers.
Mr. Gomes?
Mr. Harrop, I just had some questions on the Rogers, on the gates. What are the locations of the 4 gates? It's hard to see on this. I looked at the map.
So I'm going to be going off memory.
You want to see?
The gates, so when you're saying the 4 gates, you're looking at the tubular gates?
I just know in the...
All right, so there are 4 tubular gates, because they're hinge gates. So it's in 2 locations, because they come together and meet in the middle for locking. There's one between one of the shop buildings and the side of NACTEC. So what we're trying to avoid is the congestion of people using the backside of the school where the loading docks for NACTEC and for the cafeteria at Rogers are, and it's always loaded with vehicles up there, people using that as the main entry as drop-off points, etc. So we want to limit that. So that'll be one area. The other area is over on the other side of the fire lane, close to the auditorium, because people use the fire lane for driving through as if it's a road and for parking. And again, it gets congested over there. So that will limit that access to those areas and make it a lot easier for trucks to drop off deliveries, both for culinary and for Chartwell's in the kitchen and other deliveries we get, and keep the congestion in that area down. So that's those gates.
And I believe, just looking at this,
Yes.
and I think I know where they're at, but there's 4 bollards in the map that seem to be floating behind the NACTEC.
Yeah, and the reason those bollards are there is because it's happened before, and I've seen it. If you go behind the loading dock where there's a concrete retaining wall next to the culinary loading area, and there's a path and back to get down in the carpentry, people take that road next to automotive down past carpentry and drive over the grass and go back. Those bollards will be spread apart wide enough that you can get your lawn care equipment through there, but you can't drive a car through there. So we'll avoid having people just drive around the gates.
Okay. All right, I'll take Mr. Collin, then Ms. Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harp, can you tell us, I'm having difficulty understanding the capital improvement funds. I think in April of 2017, this year, you came before the school committee and asked for a very worthwhile project to be approved, which was shading, for lack of a better phrase, at Rogers High School. And at that time, we were told that the capital improvement fund would essentially be exhausted should we approve all of that work. Where are we getting the additional 60,000?
So again, so the 60,000 that we have right now is usually on a weekly basis, the admin assistant for public services for buildings and grounds sends us a complete budget update of all of our O&M money and all of the capital improvement money for all projects throughout the city and all line items that the city carries. And this is a small line item of money in addition to the money we had for NACTEC as an example, which was totally separate. It's just a line item of money that the city had set aside that initially started, I believe, with $250,000 of capital improvement money to be used for school improvement projects that meet the threshold and the definition of capital improvement. So I get those updates only because that's maintained on the city side so they know how much money is left in the capital improvement funding.
So this is money that the city of Newport, the city council has put aside in their fiscal 18 budget for us. This is not found anywhere within the Newport School Department's budget.
No, this is money that sits in the city spreadsheets, but it is specifically listed as for schools. The caveat being every single capital improvement project that we do, in addition to now, because it's school money, I bring it to the school committee and it's a school project, I still have to go to the city because it's on their funding sheet.
Of course. Does the city council typically refuel this fund every year? Is there a number we start with or have started with for the last few fiscal years?
My understanding was they're supposed to refresh that with a minimum of $100,000 every year, but this money has never been exhausted since I first started. So, and I think that was pretty much the first year they put money in that line item was when I started working. So that money is still kind of sitting there, has not been exhausted yet, but I would expect that there would be more money added to that line item in future years.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know that we're not really bundling all 4 of these requests, but for the purpose of the discussion, you're suggesting that we spend $32,000 more than we have. And I
No.
know that it has been
I
discussed.
think, I think what he's just saying is if you're gonna do it, don't do one without the other. He's just pointing out that it would be an
What I'm saying is,
overexpenditure.
if you do both Rogers,
Yep.
and you take out the throwing fence, you're actually going to be about $1,300 less than the total funding left available in capital
I
improvements.
completely understand that.
And then the stuff for Pell would have to be a separate project when more funding is added to that line.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so everybody understands, I think I understand, I'm sure my colleagues understand, we have 4 projects that are before us tonight with a request for funding. And the projects total, almost $100,000. And I know we're only dealing with the projects now by this discussion and potential vote for Rogers. But if we now vote to approve the projects at Rogers, what we are saying is essentially, without another source of funding, forget about Pell and forget about the lights and the new library door at Pell.
No,
Is that right?
that is incorrect, because that library door, because of the "and" clause where it's over 15,000 and something, that's $5,200. I've already accounted for that, and that can be paid for out of Claiborne Pell's repair and maintenance money. That was something that I had pushed forward in hopes of actually getting that approved as soon as possible, as I had said to the fire inspector that, we got our bids in and we really need to get that fixed sooner rather than later so we can get that deficiency off our fire inspection report. So that can be awarded.
If we approve the $30,260 for the security gates, fencing, and bollards at Rogers, and we approve the $30,000 remote door lock controls at Rogers, and we approve the parking lot pole lights at Claiborne Pell, or here, for $31,000, $32,000, and we approve the 4.8 item, the installation of steam traps at Rogers High School, will we be running a deficit? Do you have the money to pay for all 4 projects?
If you did that, yes. But again, I would not award, if the decision is made, this is the school committee's decision working with the administration. If, based upon your priority, the decision is made not to award Pell, which I would recommend right now not awarding, the lights, not the door, that's a separate issue. And if you take out the fence for the throwing ring where they're at track, it will be $59,000 and change. You can award that. Pell would have to be addressed separately, potentially rebid again, because it's going to be an aged old bid, and then money would have to be acquired to be able to award that. And then the project for the steam traps, I believe you referred to that also, really is a project where National Grid has stepped up. A huge portion of that would be through rebates and funding they would make available, and the remaining balance would be split up over 5 years, paid out of the gas bill at 0% interest. So I believe it's a worthwhile investment to get those steam traps fixed because they've never been touched. And again, that would be paid as part of your O&M bill, paying the gas bill. It wouldn't touch your capital money.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gomes, you had a couple of questions.
No, just at this point, I would make a motion that we, in 4.3, that we, they're actually broken out into separate, they're broken out into separate requests. So at this time, I would request that we, for adoption, 4.3, which is the security fencing and gates at Rogers High School and bollards, along with 4.6, which is to furnish and install surveillance cameras and remote door lock controls at Rogers High School. So it would be, at this point, I would recommend approval of 4.3 and 4.6 on the action item.
I think we have to eliminate.
Well, yeah, if I could make a comment, if you want to approve 4.3, if the way the bid was broken out, if you do the base bid and
Use the
add
bid number,
alternate
please.
number 1, and just remove add alternate number 2, because you don't have to award alternates. That's the beauty of having alternates, because you put those in because of potential funding shortages. So the base bid and add alternate 1 would be awarded, add alternate 2 would not be awarded at this time. It would be my recommendation.
Okay, and very quickly, because I think we're ready to vote, we had one person who wanted to. it had to do with this particular item. So go ahead, step right up, Jessica. Yeah.
So with the gates, okay, these gates are going to be, like, so you can't get back as easily into the NACTech building and to where that, like, I'm just misunderstanding where these gates, and I don't know what a bollock is.
So I can explain for you. So the gates would be located, basically, I'm not going to give you the exact location, about halfway up, just after the entrance to the NACTech building. When you're coming up the road, coming to the auditorium, to the gymnasium, the first gate would be located about across the building where the entrance is into NACTech. There'd be one gate there. The second gate would be installed on the back side of the auditorium, and it's basically going to prevent traffic around the back of the high school on that circulator road.
Okay.
That is used as a raceway during the school day. The principal has expressed an interest that there's a safety.
And how tall are these gates, and how big are how big are these gates? What do they look like?
Oh, the gates are going to be two-wheeler gates. They're basically just keep cars out there. The width of the drive, the paved area, with bollards on either side.
I don't know what a bollock is.
A bollard is just, you see your yellow posts that step up out of the ground so you don't drive it. That's a bollard.
Okay.
So, and, you know, we purposely left it up high so they can obviously still get behind the NACTech building because of automotive and carpentry where they drive to the back of the building. And you can certainly walk through bollards. We did that purposely because we know that people visit NACTech to go to the Colonial.
Is there going to be any access for, say, wheelchairs if people need to go behind these things to get to culinary?
So for wheelchairs, that's the case. You know, the custodian's going to have to be on call to open up the gate. And there's that project we just did at NACTech that has all new handicap accessibility into the building. So as long as they know that somebody's coming, they can open the gate.
I would suggest that that's really disrespectful to people with disabilities to have to call ahead if they have a wheelchair and need to have access. So whatever you all are planning on doing in a building that needs to be demolished anyways, I'm really concerned that we're spending all this money on a building that we're going to be meeting to actually figure out what to do with it because it's falling apart. That is another one of my concerns. As far as where these gates are and how big they are, making sure that they are ADA accessible is very important. And making sure I was trying to figure out the back of the building because I go to the Colonial Diner because my kids are in culinary and I try to go every Friday to eat. So if people can't get up there, I guess we'll figure out parking, which is fine. So that was my concerns on that. The other question that I have is security cameras or camera. And where are these security camera and or cameras going to be located? What are they going to be looking at? What is the security software we are going to be using? And who has access to these particular security cameras? Is it going to be like at Thompson where it has one looking at the door and that's it? Or is it going to be around the periphery? I have a very difficult time with spending money on security cameras, or more than one, without knowing those details. And without, again, knowing that this money we're spending is going towards a building that is literally the worst building in the state. So that's kind of my comments and my questions about the security camera. Thank you for clearing that up about what a bollock is, or bollock, or whatever.
A couple quick things, Mr. Harrop. I'm not sure if we asked Mr. Harrop to go to the staff and ask where they could strategically place more than one camera that would be viewed by someone within the school that we'd obviously have records for, because we don't nearly have enough administration or people in that building to secure a campus that's that big and wide. We also have the warm, safe, and dry that Ride told us. Regardless of the deplorable state of the school, you need to be warm, safe, and dry. And without having some sense of security of that school, we're kind of limited to the safety. I mean, you get cars flying up that back road 30, 40 miles an hour. The speed bump is to see if the shocks and tires are cool or they got the seatbelts strapped in tight enough up the backside. It's a raceway around the school. These were some issues that were safety concerns by Principal Vance and the team. Not 100% sure where the cameras are. We initially had a number that was crazy, to put cameras in every corner and square inch of that building, which we were like, that wasn't the desired effect. The desired effect was to limit some of the key areas so they could see the kids that are skipping. They walk by the fire station every day, try and identify these students and bring them in, because they come and go as they please.
Who is going to have access? I guess my other question.
Principal and the administration will have.
Principal and the administration.
Sure.
And are they going to share these films or videos with police? If deemed necessary. I will be fairly honest. I know I have a very different aspect than everybody.
If we need to.
If they need to be.
Yeah, only if it's criminal. I mean, if it's something within the school, you would want to deal with it within the school. The school actually has a.
I'm just getting concerned over if there's going to be security cameras in the school, other than to see who's coming and who's going, right?
Right.
Who is going to have access to that? And what is the security around those images? And how are they going to be maintained? And how easily are they going to be shared? Because, to be fair, something can look like a criminal activity, right, on a camera, but not be a criminal activity on camera. And I am highly concerned about minors interacting with police via a school-based camera system. I'm just being very fair and honest.
We're not looking to have the police our schools. That's not.
Well, they're already in there and they're already doing it. But what I would like to also add is that if we are going to have these security cameras, we need to have them mapped out in specific places for a very specific reason, and they need to be limited. Because let's be real for a moment. If our children were getting what they needed from their educational experience, they would not be skipping classes. So children are going to skip class regardless, but security cameras are not going to stop children from skipping classes. It is an invasion of their privacy. So if we're going to do this under the auspice of safety, as a mother, as a parent, and as a community activist and organizer, I would appreciate a listing of these proposed cameras and then information about the software and who has access and a rubric for who gets to know what, where, when, why, and how. I think that is fair.
And this debate could go on for a long time. But
no, it's okay. I just wanted to say that.
We had bomb, and I appreciate your comments. The bomb threats that we had to sweep the buildings 100% with dogs and police officers when we had them several years ago. A simple set of cameras and a quick review, fast speed, you could tell if someone was approaching that school in the middle of the night or not, and limit the amount. The idea was not to correct or keep kids in the school, or to check on them, what they're doing in the parking lot. The idea was, and you'd have to ask Mr. Vance, who's not here, and the team, is that there was a request for cameras, which they have across the state in various schools, many schools, I believe. The vandalism that we've been getting in certain areas of the school where they say there's just no way to tell who went in and out of a bathroom that was just destroyed, but we know that we can limit it to maybe a time frame and look back on that and try to find out what vandalism was done within the school, with the administration. Police need not be talked to when you're talking about your own school and your I really don't want to get into this debate much further. I understand your comments.
But I'd also like to say that the youth who were here from the high school, they had to leave because everybody was talking about all the rules and
right,
or whatever that was about. I know what it was about. I'm just being facetious. They were also very concerned about these things. So when we talk about talking to students and getting their opinions, I think these action items would be highly advisable to discuss with them. I can't stop you from approving it, right? But I would highly advise that you speak to those students and that somebody reach out to those students so that they can have their voice heard on how they think this is, because they don't, I'm not going to speak for them, but I think they have some opinions about them too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just respond to the last comment. So last year, after we met with Secure Education Consultants, I worked with the superintendent, and we actually had a working group that was comprised of teachers, administrators, and the majority of the group was actually students. And the students were the ones that said, by far, the biggest thing that they wanted to see to ensure their security in the school was security cameras. So that was working with a group. We have our meeting minutes and our notes from meeting with that group. And again, the camera's going to be mainly in the administrative building and at the two main entries, so we can identify who's coming into the school as a visitor that is not there for educational purposes. So we're not going to have every wing of the school covered. That's just not feasible to do. But that's where the locked exterior doors and the fencing come in because we're going to be able to see where the majority of visitors are coming into the building and going to registration or going to the main office because they have a student that's sick that they want to pick up and bring home. And again, the storage, which was worked with IT, both with the city and with the school, they work together. Basically, that's a 2-week turnaround. It erases itself. It does not have a storage capability to store everything into infinity, but it's just long enough that if there is an incident that does need to be reported to and investigated by the police, it's saved long enough that they can look at those images. But it's certainly not something that just any person is going to go in and look at what's happening with the cameras. They're really something there. If you need it, you look at it, but 99% of the time, hopefully you're never looking at those images because you don't need to.
On the motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have a question on the award of the bid to ATG Group, Inc. Mr. Harrop said he concurs with the recommendation contingent upon the school department's tech providing adequate reasoning to justify awarding this project to ATG Group instead of the low bidder. Was there justification?
Yeah, which they did. That's when they met with the city MIS, and the ATG Group put together the most comprehensive proposal, but not only the most comprehensive, but the low bidder, as an example, was actually thrown out by Newport Police because they use inferior products that break all the time. And when you're having security concerns, you don't want inferior cameras and monitoring that's going to be down all the time because it's not reliable. So really, this ATG Group is very consistent with what they use within the city of Newport and Newport Police, so that if there does need to be a link between the schools and the city or police, they're all using compatible systems.
Good. Okay. That's good.
Becky? Ms. Boland?
Yeah, a couple questions. One is going to be the ADA. That's a very big concern. We just spent a lot of money to make NACTech ADA, approved, compatible. So if I absolutely agree that somebody should not have to call to get themselves from the NACTech building, and even our visitors that use that. So I guess I'm going to ask Neil, what do you think of putting in a fence that, would force us to call someone to get them in?
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Harrop, but it sounded as if it's ADA compliant, but I'll defer
So,
to you.
and I can only go back to my former life. So obviously working on military bases, we had secure bases, and anytime an outside visitor came in, we had more ADA access, believe it or not, to military buildings than you want to imagine. Every floor, every level, ADA access all over the place. But guess what? Anyone that was visiting had to give advance notice that they were coming on, and if they needed access through the gates, because at that point, security is the paramount piece where, yes, you have to be concerned and take care of your people that need that ADA access, but at the same time, if you leave that gate open, and I know I'm going a little overboard, but say you leave the gate open, if you're talking about security measures, you could have a VBIED, or a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. If you don't have gates and other security measures against those, then whatever you have isn't going to count. And let's be realistic, that stuff happens all over the world. They just had bombs going off in New York City again. So, we're offering the protection.
The sidewalks, this is just to stop the motor vehicle traffic, correct?
Right. But you're trying to, having those high-speed avenue of approach on a paved surface.
So the sidewalks are all clear and open. There's no limit.
The sidewalks are clear and open except for bollards, because actually they don't always drive over the speed bumps. I don't know how many people I saw driving on the sidewalk to avoid the speed bumps.
But there's more than enough area for a wheelchair. You're not.
Well, yes.
In other words, you don't have to open a gate for a student
for a
or an individual.
for a chair to get through office. No.
Oh, you don't. Okay.
Again, wide enough to be able to get lawn care equipment through. So obviously,
All right. I just wanted to make sure that
you're gonna have 5 or 6 feet between your bollards.
Okay.
So people will easily be able to get through them.
The next question is, so if I were coming and wanting to come in the back gate, right, of the school, or somebody that was authorized, that had a thing, how would they come to the back door and then a camera would buzz them in? Or, no, nobody can come in that way anymore. Is that, what are we saying? I'm just
So
trying to figure out.
the intent after all of our meetings and discussions with the principal and with the administration was to have 2 secure entries that will have card reader access, or would also be used where you could get remote access by being buzzed in. So they'll have cameras watch them. And that's where registration is, and that's where the main entry off of Wickham Road is. Those are the entries that are supposed to be used as your main entries.
What is the main one off Wickham? Is that the one by the gym?
No, that's.
No, Wickham is the
where
one.
That's where the bubble is.
The bubble.
Okay, so that students though will be able to get in through the back, right?
That is correct.
And how will they access the door?
Well, they're supposed to be coming in through the main entry on the front side of the building, so we're actually trying to get.
Between classes? Between classes?
No, between classes, they're going to have to use those doors. But that's something that we're going to have to, work on and figure out how we're going to be able to do it moving forward. Because the same thing with NACTech allowing people access for culinary. That's another step in the process.
All right. And then I just want to comment that I absolutely 100% do not think we should eliminate the chain link fence for $1,800 at this point. And if you say wait till the spring, they're going to be practicing by spring. It needs to be done in the winter so that it's ready when they start practicing in February, late February.
So if we do that, then.
We don't.
Well, I'm just saying, if we did not eliminate it for now, and there's nothing to say that they have to wait till spring. It could be rebid within the next 2 weeks as an O&M project. But if it's, just keep in mind, if it's awarded as part of the CIP, now you're basically eliminating 2 other projects that there will not be sufficient funding for.
We are talking about adding funding, right, from the fund balance to approve the projects tonight.
But right now, there's $59,000. They're not going to add money to it tomorrow.
No, the fund balance we can add.
Correct, but I believe what Mr. Harrop's saying for this evening, approve the 2 bids that can be funded tonight.
Right.
If you want to go further at the next meeting, you can award, do whatever you want to do then. And the concern is with the fencing, the $1,800 for that fencing, Mr. Harrop's stating there isn't enough funding then for those 2 projects that he considers a package deal, I'll call it, for Rogers.
And actually the fence, the chain, the throwing circle is part of that, so.
Right, but it's as an add alternate, which the way add alternates work, you do not have to award all add alternates. You award the base bid and alternates that can be afforded, which is why you have add alternates. So if you get into a money crunch, you can award the portions of the project that you have sufficient funding for. And again, literally, I could work with Jeff Watts to rebid that project as a separate standalone within the next 2 weeks and have it done well before track season starts.
And bring it back at the next meeting. Okay.
Me too.
So,
unfortunately, Mr. Gomes?
Mr. Harrop, sorry, one more question. On 4.6 on the surveillance cameras and remote door locks, the 2 doors, was there any discussion about adding the door to that system of door locks at the ROTC entrance at the high school?
no, there was no discussion about that. This was all based upon, again, Mr. Vance walking through the hallways with the IT folks and the others, figuring out what would be the best areas to have available for access.
So with that in mind, if we were
But it's an expandable system, so it could be added to in the future.
That was going to be my next question.
It is expandable.
We could add it down the road if we find
Yes.
that increased access is available.
That
we
was
can add to the system to expand it.
That was one of our primary goals, was to ensure whatever we get is something that is expandable, that could be developed.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, do I need to make a correction to my motion?
Yeah.
I think so again, my motion would be to approve 4.3, the security gates and associated fencing and bollards at the high school, along with 4.6, surveillance cameras. On 4.3, I would say that we would approve it based on the addition of add item 1 at this time. So 4.3 would be the base plus add item 1. 4.6 would be the request as proposed this evening I recommend both for approval at this time.
There's a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted, it's unanimous, thank you. The next would be 4.4, which is the request approval to reinstall the library door at Pell Elementary.
Mr. Chairman, I move the agenda item.
Second. Mrs. Gaines is seconded. One quick question on that door, Mr. Harrop. The price to replace that door, what are they doing other than putting the door back on the frame? I don't get the whole breadth of that number.
So what they're going to have to do is, because they can't just punch new hinge slots into the frame, they're putting a new door frame in. This is after talking to the captain, fire inspector.
Fire inspector, okay.
And they're going to reverse the swing of the door, so it'll require a new door frame, putting new appropriate hardware in, and reversing the swing so they have the door back in place and swinging in the appropriate direction for egress.
Okay. That was my question. That's sufficient. Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. And then a suggestion potentially for 4.5, that's to approval of an award of furnish and install LED parking lights in the lots behind Pell Elementary School.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to remove 4.5 as an action item at this time.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. Request for approval of a lease, Town of Middletown, JFK, Superintendent.
So moved.
Seconded.
Superintendent Jermaine, that's all in order, I believe.
It's all in order and has been reviewed.
Any questions on that? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. 4.8.
Mr. Chair, may I at this time thank the Middletown Town
yes.
Council and the Town of Middletown for their help and
Thank you,
support.
Middletown. We're working on our two-year plan. We promise you that. Thank you again. 4.8, request for approval to award contract furnishing and installing steam traps at Rogers High School.
Make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Any questions? Mr. Harp, you briefly went over this. This is something that we're going to pay. We get it. We're going to pay it back with zero interest.
Correct. You pay it in the little contract it's signed, and
Okay.
National Grid has already put in the paperwork for the rebates, trying to stay ahead of the game. They'll come in, just replace it, and then they'll add the balance spread out over 5 years at no interest to the gas bill.
Mr. Harp, I do have one question. I'm assuming, knowing what the steam traps are and the issues we have with heat, that this will improve the heat in many portions of Rogers High School, I believe, as a...
This should improve the heat. I will say that, you know, we did the same exact thing at City Hall last year. We had some hiccups in the beginning because what happens was once the steam traps start working correctly, we did have some bumps in the road where we had to fix, but minor fixes. But long-term, overall, the level of comfort within City Hall has improved as a result of doing a similar project last year.
Mrs. Gaines?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I hate to do this, but we're done as far as action items.
We're on one right now.
I thought we were done.
No.
4.8.
Okay, I'll wait till we finish.
All those in favor of approving 4.8?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. Thank you. Mrs. Gaines?
Mr. Chair, I hate to do this, but I'm asking for reconsideration of my vote under 4.2. I was confused, and I didn't vote the way I wanted to, the way I meant to.
I'll second that.
Okay, so reconsideration.
Reconsideration of the vote on, 1440. I think it was 1440.
What number?
It was the one we were
No,
talking
1440,
about evaluation.
4690.
Oh, that.
4690. Could we reconsider that vote?
I'll second her motion to reconsider the vote.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order,
I have a
please.
question, yeah, for Mr. Galvin as far as, go ahead, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Chairman, will the reconsideration of this motion change the vote in any manner?
Yes.
How so, please?
Wait a minute.
What's the
prefer to
question?
hear from the lawyer.
What is the
There's
question?
been a question to reconsider Mrs. Gaines' personal vote taken on 4.2, directly specific to the policy number 4690, which has to do with evaluations. The vote was taken. There was an amendment made to the original that went.
Well, she was.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. With great respect to my colleague, and I seconded her request for reconsideration because I think it's something we should all be afforded, but I believe Mrs. Gaines was in the minority on a 4-3 vote.
No, she was in the majority.
She was in the majority.
Mr. Carlin, you and I voted. We're the only ones that voted.
Yeah, she was in the majority.
We're talking about 1542, the amendment that the chairman offered?
As amended.
No, we're talking as amended.
As amended, the total, thank you for clarification. Thank you, Mrs. Gaines.
My understanding of a motion for reconsideration, typically it's done on the same evening, at the same meeting at which the topic was discussed. Very rarely and occasionally could be considered possibly at the subsequent meeting. So generally, I think at the same meeting, it is in order for your consideration. So you can consider that motion and take a vote on it.
Kathy might want to read the motion back.
On the amended.
On the amendment.
Well, first you have to have the majority
We need the
allow
majority to approve the
reconsideration.
reconsideration. So there's been a
Before
motion made and
taking a
seconded
revote.
for Mrs. Gaines to reconsider her vote that she
It would
made.
be the entire vote. We'd all have to vote again.
I understand that. I don't want to be confused, but I believe the person asking to change their vote is Mrs. Gaines, and then we will have to bring this and vote again on the motion. Am I correct?
That's right. The
We have
full
to
committee has
approve
to allow
Mrs.
it before-
Gaines's
That's right.
request to bring it back up for reconsideration first, which will then put the motion back on the table as it was amended to be voted on again.
Right.
Correct?
Correct, and before you take that up, you may want to just be sure what the vote was, so you have the actual correct vote.
Mrs. Nash, would you,
So we're talking about 4690?
correct?
On the revised.
Sorry. Mr. Carlin and Mrs. Sylvia opposed.
The vote was 5-2 with Mr. Carlin and Ms. Sylvia opposed, so that it is in fact Mrs. Gaines was in the majority. Okay, so there's been a motion made and seconded to open up that 4.2 for reconsideration by Mrs. Gaines. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute.
Wait,
Is this
wait a
on
minute.
her vote
No,
for
we're voting to give
reconsideration?
you.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So we have to take a vote, guys. The vote right now would be, an in favor vote would be to allow Mrs. Gaines or to open up this to be voted upon once again. All those in favor of the motion to reconsider Mrs. Gaines's vote
The
on
entire
4.2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted.
One opposed, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Boland. Okay, so the motion now is back open and on the floor as it was amended. Can you please read the motion as it was amended, Ms. Nash?
Screen froze.
Hmm?
The screen froze.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Said evaluations will be available for review during this meeting upon request by a school committee member. This is an addition to policy number 4690.
Okay, as it's
Was
been,
that the amendment?
that is
Yes.
the amendment,
That is the
yes.
amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
So,
roll call vote, please.
excuse me, so we're not voting on the amendment?
No,
We're voting on...
The motion as amended.
As amended.
Correct.
Okay.
meaning what?
Do individually, just have to
Each
have
one
a
of
roll
us
call
vote
vote.
individually.
Is that debatable?
What's that?
Roll call vote?
No,
A roll call vote?
That's what Mr. Carlin just asked for.
No, he just called the vote. I thought.
No, he said roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Galvin, I'm asking for a roll call vote, a non-debatable motion on the end policy 4.2 overall, as I understand it.
No, we're looking at 4690. Right?
It is 4690.
4690.
Okay,
And it's
4690 as part of
amended,
4.2.
As read,
Yeah, but
correct.
this is, we took them, that was pulled, it was separate.
I'm asking for a roll call vote on the revote on 4690.
Well, I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure what is meant by the roll call vote in that
I'm
respect.
asking that the roll be called, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with calling each individual out. If it's my position to do that, I would have to say, David, this is not something that I have done very often myself, and if I'm doing it inappropriately or handling it
No, not at all. No, I
nothing
just...
further than saying,
It's
Mr.
been...
Collin, how do you vote?
As I said, I think that Mrs. Gaines is certainly entitled to this. It's been a very confusing last 5 minutes or so, but I just want to ask for individual members' names to be called and their vote to be recorded, rather than a vote of yay or nay as a body.
Ms. Nash, if you wouldn't mind working from Mrs. Boland down towards Mr. Collin, if you are either in favor of this motion as it's amended or against it, if you could just ask each individual.
Mrs. Boland?
I'm in favor.
Mrs. Gaines?
No.
Mrs. Sylvia?
Opposed.
Mr. Hanos?
For it.
Mr. Gomes?
Yay.
Dr. Flowers?
For it.
I'm sorry?
For it.
Mr. Carlin?
Nay.
Okay.
So it's 4-3?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I apologize. That wasn't one that I did very often, Dave. Sorry. Okay, moving on to discussion items. We have a discussion item to look at the report on steps taken to increase student attendance rates, and this was a follow-up to my request at the last meeting. Ms. Jermaine?
I lost my glasses.
Did they get knocked off with the microphone?
All right, so in front of you this evening, I know you have Mr. Vance, Ms. Westman, and Mr. Campion, I believe, all provided updates to you. No, we can't see them. Sorry. It's embarrassing. Okay, where are we?
Mine went blank again. We're at,
Okay, all right, 5-1, thank you. So you'll see that at the high school, I'm sorry, I should be speaking to that. So you'll see that at the high school, we have the grade level competitions, which have begun, homeroom competitions and individual competitions that have implemented at Rogers High School. We also have been working on it's called a buyback program for our students to do community service, to do internship, and do additional work to go from unexcused to unexcused to excused absences. This is something Young Voices will be bringing forward to you. They're working with Mr. Vance and the council, Mr. Vance, the student council, on that, and they're going to be bringing back a proposal with some ideas as far as how to improve the attendance. At the Thompson Middle School, you'll see is an example of their going on positive reinforcement, which the research and the studies have shown seems to have a much bigger and larger impact with students. And they are now conducting bi-monthly meetings, and they're looking at the students' attendance, and they're looking into perfect attendance, improved attendance, et cetera. And they have people making the personalized calls. I need to go back to Rogers. Rogers has also started the personalized calls, and they've taken a certain number of students per person, and they call on individual students and speak with their families. We also at Rogers, another creative thing they've done is, which you approved last month, was the bilingual interpreter to help in the dean's office and with Mr. Hano, and that has been tremendously helpful for the office to reach out to families to explain the importance of attendance and meeting with parents. So they've already seen some positive improvements there. The Pell Truancy meetings, they are continuing to be held.
They still have their interventions as far as daily robocalls, and the administrators, the 3 administrators, are taking lists, and they're making individualized calls and speaking with families about the importance of attendance. Our student student attendance officer is also going out in the field with a child and family service representative, and they've been helping as far as getting more students into school on a regular basis. We do have some other initiatives that I have actually broached the subject with the city manager, and it was something that Mrs. Fuertes brought up the last time she was here, and actually I've had a meeting with her as far as getting more of the community involved, and as far as what they used to do in the past, and getting our community police officers and others involved as far as helping with the students. But we have further work to do there, and I have to follow up on a meeting that she held in the community to see if she has any more ideas on that. But that's the Pell Truancy. There's a comprehensive report being put together that you'll have for February per your request to have an update and to see the quantitative numbers as far as improvements.
I have a comment.
Yes.
It came to my attention from a couple teachers were discussing this, that their students at Rogers have daytime jobs, and so they have students that are not consistently there because they work like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I think we got to get the message out to the community that they shouldn't be hiring our students in the middle of the day. You know, so, and I know that under a certain age it's illegal, correct? I mean, it's, you know.
I think that's part of what we're going to have with the community discussions, and we need to speak with families and look at what's going on. And the only thing I can say at this point, I do know that some of those students are supporting the families. And I do understand there are laws, as far as child labor laws. I think it's a bigger and further discussion with community members and what we can do to help as a school system. As a matter of fact, today we went to visit a school, some of us did, Mr. Gomes, Ms. Cesarini, Carly Cesarini, and Lynn Grantham, and we were in Fall River today, and they actually have some programs from 3 to 5 to help accommodate some of the students that do have internships or work, or they're on specific programs. I am following up with their assistant director, Ms. Moy, that I've worked with in the past, and she's going to be sending us some curriculum ideas going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and I thank the staff and the administration for working on the issues that are difficult at best.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just curious. There are agencies and organizations that have mini buses and that. I mean, they say if a student misses the bus going to Rogers from this end of town, then they're not going to go to school. Is there any agency that would be willing to, or even our van?
Right, that's actually been brought up by the students. That's part of the discussion too, as far as how we transport students. The bus company at times has offered, and there may be the possibility that they would do a later run after they finish after they do the regular bus runs. One of the challenges, and bless you, one of the challenges about that, and the students even kind of grin and nod their head, if we provide a service later in the morning, there may be a tendency for students to sleep in more than we would like.
Like 10 minutes later.
So we can look into some of that. We're having further discussions on that one. Okay. Because the students brought that to my attention.
The next would be the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
There's been a motion made to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussions? None being seen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Request for reimbursement benefit contribution. That's in there. I'm sorry. That was the consent agenda. 7.0 is monthly correspondence. Do we have anybody to welcome? Did we put any?
Yes, we do.
Let's welcome some folks into the Newport Public School System, and I'm sorry. That was part of the consent agenda.
I'd like to, at Rogers High School, I'd like to welcome Megan Hall. She will be a .8 Rogers High School social studies teacher. Also like to welcome Sarah Cloutier, who's the nurse at Rogers High School. Patrick Coente is our Director of Technology. Nancy Markey is Director of Human Resources. Dr. Carlos Colley will be replacing Mr. Tappas Roy, and he'll be our Director of Administrative Services and Business Manager. And then we've got Christina Dawson, paraeducator at Pell, Lindsay Hill, paraeducator at Pell, Madison Luther, a paraeducator at Pell, Sabrina Mello, another paraeducator at Pell Annex, Stephanie Miller, paraeducator in our alternative assessment, Rogers High School. We also have a classroom enhanced paraeducator, Erin Reimer, Tori Rose, paraeducator at Pell, Amy Sawborn, another paraeducator at Thompson Middle School. And then we have our own teachers that have come forward to work as coaches and drama coach and class advisors for our school. So thank you and welcome aboard to the Newport Public Schools.
Thank you. The next item would be monthly correspondence, and I believe the only thing that I have officially to report on was that we received a letter from RIDE stating that we've gotten our voluntary compliance taken care of for the school year 14-15, finding that we are approved, bringing the center into full compliance with federal civil rights laws, regulations, guidelines included in this review. So.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Mr. Tom Harab and his staff and our own custodial staff for making this happen very quickly. And it was a voluntary compliance plan that we put together, and we completed it well within the time required.
The next reports are from the superintendent and staff, but superintendent, this is on you because you don't have a finance individual here, but we'll go right through them. We got expenditure, revenue, school restricted grants, enrollment reports, homeless reports, chronic early absenteeism, CTRI, superintendent's update, partnerships, and collaborations. So, Ms. Germain, if you would please.
Great. As far as our finance report, and Mr. Roy is sorry he could not attend today. He had a family member, family matter he had to address. Nothing unusual in the expenditure and grant reports, except for the, as he notes, that the $40,000 Rhode Island Foundation grant has not been added to this tally that you see in front of you this evening. You have an update, which you just heard right now, about attendance and the work that's going on there. I do want to bring to your attention in the, Mr. Harab has been very busy, and he has provided for you a facility maintenance management calendar to go forward, and I think that is something we need to look at. Technology update, Mr. Quente has been very busy, and you'll see there's been a lot, especially regarding the implementation of the new technology that was awarded to us by the City Council, the additional 600 plus K. Durham bus reports are there in front of you as well. You can see that on time or any late bus arrivals that have occurred. I've also asked that if there are any fender benders or accidents, you will notice that there was a fender bender, and we did have a small bump accident out here. Those will be included going forward. The Nellie Mae conversations wrapped up. We'll be having a meeting in January to bring all that information forward. The bar grant keeps going forward, and the Van Buren Charitable Foundation as far as high school redesign. Lots of families, students, community people, and teachers have been participating in going on high school visits. We'll have at least 4 to 5 more between now and February. We had the second Parent Advisory Council meeting on December 4th. The next one will be January 8th, 5:30 to 7 here at the Pell Elementary School. NESDEC enrollment data is in front of you right now. Unlike other districts, the Newport Public Schools are increasing in enrollment, and you'll see that in the projections, and we've already reached the projection that's mentioned for next year. So just to keep that in mind. I did attend the Rhode Island State Council Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunities for Military Children. We're part of the compact, and we're trying to make our district be a military-friendly district, and try to remember the needs of our military families. And on Saturday, you heard about the ROTC, I believe, competition. One of the other things I do want to bring to your attention, and I am going to look to Ms. Bolin about our, unfortunately, our homeless numbers are going up. And you'll notice from last month to this month, there's a significant, I consider a significant increase. I believe we went from the 40s to the 60s, and I got to go through my paper here.
66, I think.
We went to 66, and we have more children that are being impacted by the homelessness, and especially during the holiday seasons. I just want our community, I know Newport's a great community that helps support our families, but it is a challenge for many of us as far as working with our students and families to make sure that they have just the basic needs of being able to come to school every day. And I'm going to Mrs. Bowen.
This has always been a challenge, an interest of the Health and Wellness Committee, but we have what is called a backpack program here in Newport, and we try to feed the neediest of families, and we have the family service coordinators identify those families, and they basically have identified 100 children that need to have food sent home with them on the weekend, because we feed them here breakfast, lunch, and a dinner program, and they go home on the weekends, and many of them are hungry. And this program runs about $10 per child, and it's run, you know, we get help through some up in Providence, the food bank, right, up in Providence. But this year, we got a majority of our funding was cut. It had to be shared with something else. We only have $7,000, I think, and they didn't even start the program this year until after Christmas. So our kids have not taken home food this year, and they're afraid that they really are going to have a hard time cutting down those 100 kids, figuring out who's not going to get fed. Right. And so they're looking for outside support. Correct. We're looking for people who, you know, feel as if they could, you know, at this time help to feed these children. And we've, you know, gone through all the grants that we think we can go through. So now we're looking for support from, you know, some of our philanthropists or families out in town to help us to feed these kids.
Right, and if anyone has any ideas or agencies we may not have approached, we'd appreciate, we're trying to help Christina Ruth with her program at EBEC, not EBEC, EBCAP, thank you. And so we're about $7,000 or $8,000 short this year. And one of the things that people don't realize when snow days happen, so people always say, what's the worst part of the job? And I always say, snow days. You can't win either way. You're having school or not having school, and you have to think of children's safety. But the other thing we have to think about is whether a child's going to be fed that day. Because a majority of our students that seek assistance do not always have a hot meal every day. And when they don't have school, or they don't have multiple days of school in a row, then we have to think about, and that's where that backpack program comes in critical to meet family needs.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Gomes.
Mr. Jermaine, could you, you said snow days. Where is the recently approved state with the backpack or the work in the backpack to go home on snow days? Is that moving along through the state?
Okay, so there is. All right, so everyone can see me. I'm smiling. I'm laughing about this one. All right, the Blizzard Bag initiative and the new law that was passed is very cumbersome and requires an additional staff person to oversee this program and to guarantee access and opportunity for all our families. How we monitor this and what we determine is going to be a tool to measure this is very challenging. There is not a district yet that has taken this on with the guidance that was provided for RIDE. So right now it's something that's under review, and I'm continuing to work with the other districts and my colleagues to see what anyone is going to do to be able to implement it. It has to be approved. You have to have certain criteria to meet this. It will be an added expense.
Okay. Fully funded by the state, correct? Since
No.
it was mandated by the
No.
state?
Usually people who make up these things should have to be made to figure it out.
Thank you. Are there any questions or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 4 quick questions for the superintendent regarding the reports. Where can I find the fund balance from fiscal 17 as reflected in the revenue report?
The fund balance is not reflected in the financials that are provided to you. They're carried forward from year to year, but I'll be happy to have that report for you starting next month if you'd like.
Okay. What's the exact fund balance or the rough fund balance?
It's approximately, I believe it's a little over 700 around that
Does
time.
that include this year?
No, that does not include this year. This
When
year,
do we hear
the
about
audit, they're finishing up, and I believe it should be ready to go to print. I actually had an email exchange with the city finance director today, so she was just polishing it up, and probably I can have it for you electronically by the end of this week. Okay?
So we have in the neighborhood of a $700,000 surplus from fiscal 17. Fund balance, surplus, same thing in the dictionary.
So I'm pausing. I have to tell you, Mr.
We have
Carlin.
$700,000 left over that we didn't spend, which we budgeted in fiscal 17.
No,
Is that right?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
That's all
have to
right.
say I haven't thought about or reflected upon the fund balance in such a while. I'm hoping my memory is pretty much on target. I am looking over to Mr. Gomes at this point. Was it about 700 or?
2 years, too, it's not one.
Right. I can't.
Yeah, I don't believe that that's an accurate number.
Okay, that's why I'm looking at it.
I don't have an accurate number, but we can certainly get it.
Right,
Sure.
I'll get it for you.
That'd be great. You answered the other question about the audit. It's ongoing with the city now? Last year was November.
It's finishing
so-
up.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then 2 other quick questions. The fiscal 17 operating budget, when we got our final report, we had a line item. It's not a tremendous amount of money compared to a $38 million budget for fiscal 17, but we had Medicaid, which was a line item. We expected in our original budget to receive about $400,000 from Medicaid. Actually, it was a bit more than that last year. I apologize. The $400,000 is for fiscal 18. In fiscal 17, we expected that $522,000 in Medicaid. We ended up receiving only $113,000 in Medicaid dollars, so we fell short by about $408,000 at the close of fiscal 17. This year, we budgeted far less, $122,000 less. Why are we confident that we're going to get $400,000 in Medicaid dollars when we only got $113,000 last year?
Okay, so I do believe we did receive more Medicaid reimbursement after the fact.
Okay.
The other thing is we did learn when we were going through the Medicaid reimbursement process, and I credit Mr. Roy and Ms. Grantham, who's here this evening, that we found out that when children receive services and they're Medicaid reimbursable, that when they go from district to district, you have to make sure that the family signs on to agree to those payments going to the district, filing for the payments. That's the easiest way for me to say it. We also learned that we can go back, that they're retroactive. Is it up to 1 year or 2 years? It's up to 1 year. So we are actually now, and Ms. Grantham and her department, they're going back now, and we're going back to the families, and we're seeking reimbursement that we did not get credited for that year. So we're hoping to see, staying on top of the process, being better educated about what we need to do as a district to make sure we get those reimbursements. We're thinking we'll be able to recoup money and meet that revenue goal. Okay, so Ms. Grantham is whispering in my ear, we qualify for new things this year going forward with Medicaid regulations? Okay, and that also.
Was that the line item that you said some folks were a little bit reluctant to fill out?
Correct.
So, yeah, so sometimes we probably could have been getting more, but they were skittish about filling out some information? Wasn't that it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Mr. Carlin.
So maybe Mr. Roy might be the appropriate person, our business manager, to ask this question of, but the close of last fiscal year, as of June 30th, we had received about $113,000 from Medicaid, as I said. And this last report you provided to us through October the 30th suggests that we've received $30,276 this year from Medicaid reimbursement. So when you said a moment or two ago that we have, after the close of the fiscal 17 year, we've received more money from the federal government by way of Medicaid reimbursement. Where is it? In other words, it's not that $30,276 year-to-date we've received from Uncle Sam. So what are we doing with this extra money? Where's the extra money that we received after the close of last fiscal year being reflected?
I don't know if it is being reflected now, because we are working with the city. It's our first year working with the city, and they don't necessarily do accruals if revenues or something comes in after their cutoff date. But Mr. Roy is the one that can better answer that.
Actually, I probably will address my question to Ms. Citron, but do you know how much more money we received approximately?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
That's okay. No worries. And my last question, Mr. Chairman, is in September we approved 31 positions, many of which were budgeted for whatever reason. Some were as a result of leave of absences, medical and otherwise. But there were several which were unfunded in the proposed personnel budget for fiscal 18. I asked at the time, I said, where are we getting the money for these 8 unbudgeted positions? And at the time, the answer was, we are not spending as much money as we thought in the tuition line item. Tuition line item being $55,600 in our fiscal 18 budget. You had suggested, or you answered me at the time, that we moved money from tuition that we had expected to spend to personnel, again, because we did not have the necessity to spend what we budgeted for tuition. But I see that in this report, the tuition line item is exactly where it was on September 10th when I asked that question. Why aren't we making these internal transfers and recording it according to accounting standards?
So I would have to talk to Mr. Roy. I know there's been transition with the city at this point in time, and we've had conversations about when those, I'll say, adjustments are being made, and we're still having that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome. Sorry.
All right, seeing nothing further, I think and thank you for the reports. We appreciate it. It is sad to see our homeless rates going up, and obviously we'll reach out to our friends. What is that? Why are we bringing that out specifically?
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
We're done with that whole thing, right?
No.
We're done with your reports, correct, Superintendent Jermaine?
Correct.
So we went through 8.1 through 8.6?
Yeah.
This was under 8.6. We haven't.
Would you like to review the calendars?
I believe it's under the superintendent's reports to us, so I was expecting her to say something. She said she was done with all the 8s.
Yeah.
But if you have a question...
Do you have a question on it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Ask on it. If you got a question.
I do.
Okay.
Do we have to vote on that? No. I noticed on all of the examples, this might be a sore subject, but I have to ask. We have put in parent-teacher conferences. Are we going to be able to maintain this, or will there be more grievances? How are we going to handle parent-teacher conferences?
I think that's going to be a negotiation item going forward.
Okay. I just noticed it was on all of the calendars.
Yes.
And I know it's a subject of interest right now.
Yes.
So I was just curious.
Thank you. Meeting dates and times, agenda items that we have listed here. It's already beyond the 12th, am I correct? Today's the 12th. We have a couple from yesterday that were listed. We have December 14th, Finance Advisory Audit Subcommittee. That's in Career Tech in room 924 at 5 o'clock on December 14th. December 18th, we have a Facilities Subcommittee meeting, Career Tech in room 924 at 6 p.m. January 9th, 2018, we have a regular school committee meeting scheduled to go off at 6:30 right here. We have the pre-meeting at 6:15. And the same with February 13th, we have a regular school committee meeting scheduled to be right here at Pell School at 6:30 with the same 6:15. I would just like to state that we did have, Superintendent Jermaine, if you could do your diligence on maybe doing a better job. Some of the parents at Thompson the other night said that they had gotten a notification for the meeting with the staff about certain things. They had gotten something on, just on a, in their pocket. In other words, they got it on the app that they have.
Right.
And that quite possibly we could put it in other places so that people are fully aware. Like, I don't see that other meeting that you had scheduled in here that you mentioned earlier on December. Parent advisory. That's not in here. Like, that's an open meeting. So I kind of want to, when we list these out, it's something that we can hand off to the papers. And if they choose to, or we want to post so that everybody's fully aware and it just doesn't get clicked on somebody's app. I want to get more participation. 3 parents showed up the other night at Thompson Middle School, and it was thought that quite potentially, for whatever reason, maybe we could have expanded how we tried to reach out to them. That's all. I want to make sure that everybody's fully aware that these things are happening with plenty of notification so that we can have as much participation as possible. And with that is the rest that I have here. Don't believe we have the necessity to go into executive tonight.
Mr. Chair.
I would be looking for a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you
you.
guys very much.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.